Cat, Billy, is that the name of the book? I'm not sure if I have that book, so I don't want to say. I don't think I haven't read that book, so I don't want to say. But
You know what you could do?
also the thing, if you get a book in your hand, take it.
Yeah. And go to the back. Because in the back of the book, they got all different references. But you write those down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You write
Yeah.
those down.
You know, I collect a lot of books, so I have. Like I
Yeah,
said, my
that's what
library's
I
over
do.
at-
I
it's
got a
almost
list. My
1,500.
list right now is like
So I collect a lot of books that aren't so good,
Right.
that might have shaky information.
Yeah.
Like I have one. There's a big book about. I forgot the name of the book though, but I can look it up. But I don't want to waste time. It's about 800 pages though. It's about genetics and stuff. I took it anyways. I'm finding this stuff free. You know what I mean? But, collecting everything. So I start to look inside the book, like the God said. I look at the references. What is he referencing and what's his perspective? Then I say, okay, I'm not going to spend time to read this straight through, but use it as a reference, because he already started saying that the foundation of humanity begins in Europe. So I was like, oh, X. You know what I mean? But I'm still going to keep it there, because when I want to be able to counter, remember, this white man went through a lot of process to think that he could prove this in 800 pages. So if I want to be able to counter things, I'm going to go to this and say, see, let me see why this is not right and exact. Not just say, this is not right and exact. It says that the black man's not God, and then I'm going to throw it away. No, keep it. Because when it's time to me to get that muscle, that's what I'm going to pick up and say, he says this thing. And I don't bear witness to that. I'm going to go study this and see his references or his way of look. And look, when you read Chikanta Diop, African Origin of Civilization, when you read Chancellor Williams, Destruction of Black Civilization, when you read the works of Ivan Van Sertima, right? What do you think that they read so that they could counter and make questions? Because I always tell you, right, a scholar, a scientist experimenting with high explosives are not built on answers. You know what I'm saying?
Questions.
You're built on questions. The better your questions, the better you have a field to operate to get answers. If you there's no need to go to, if you have answers only, there's no need to go to.
Like Industrialized Afro civilization. Like John C. Jackson.
Right, there's another one, John Jackson.
Yeah.
And again, the books he mentioned, the books I mentioned, that's all in your beginner book list. Some of them I have digitally, some of them I have digitally, some of them they don't exist digitally.
If you look at all the historians, right?
How about the one that you told me, the Indian girl?
That one exists digitally if you buy it. I don't have it though.
Where can I find that book?
That's on Amazon, that's easy to find. Because Jack Weatherford, by the way, he's the best author to find about my man Genghis Khan and his histories. Big fan of Genghis Khan.
But you know, you throw up your information.
Reading history. But what's the other thing? The reason I'm saying that though about the indigenous, I wanted to take, because you said you're Puerto Rican, I didn't even know you was Puerto Rican, even though I can tell you was Puerto Rican, I didn't ask you, right? When you get this down yourself, you have to know African American history. Out of respect, because you got this knowledge here, and there was a reason that they brought it here. But if you're coming from a Puerto Rican background, you also have to know that background immediately as well. So, you also have to know the intersections of it. As in this question, and maybe I might stump you, and I'm just doing this so you can see the point. Where was the Puerto Rican flag made? Okay. See, that's right. You know how I did last time with your New York, your NY hat and everything like that? You know what I mean? Showed you it was the cop symbol, the cop widow symbol. I'm being
Law Infinite.
I got nothing. We don't win anything, so I got to do something. But
Information on head.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
But,
right.
yeah.
the Puerto Rican flag
That's what I was asking.
is the opposite
Peace,
colors
peace.
generally of Cuba, right? The reason is because that flag was made in the early maybe like the teens, 1910s. I forget the exact year, or even no earlier, in 1900s, circa that time, right?
Peace to everyone tuning in.
That was made
Peace,
a
peace.
symbol of solidarity for independence and to link up the three Latin American islands of the Greater Antilles in the Caribbean, DR, PR, Cuba. Of course, DR already has flags, so it's They should have changed it anyway.
With the
but-
Bible on it.
Yeah.
But
The one that y'all must have had problems as kids trying to draw this stuff, right?
let me ask you
Because
something.
PR flag is easy to draw. It's a triangle, some lines, and you're done. You know, one star.
Let me ask you something. Before they had that flag, didn't they have this thing called an escudo?
They had islands and insignias, but they were different townships and stuff. You know what I mean? Like the flag of Lares, which is famous because that was one of the first, most popular uprisings against slavery and stuff. You know what I mean? But no national flag. Because remember, Puerto Rico is interesting because it has the last. It's conquered by the last two of the last greatest oppressors. You know, Spain, which is like the first great oppressor once the African slave trade is made, and then it switches over and gets a handoff to the U.S. So their identity has always been skewed, and then more so with Puerto Rico. So you can understand that unlike even the other Latin Caribbean countries, Puerto Rico went through a brainwashing period. What they call Operation Bootstrap, right? And that's always a derogatory term, right? When they try to take away stuff from us, hey, pull your stuff up by a bootstrap. And I talked about this. There's some videos I talked about that in Mecca recording, so it's repetitive and redundant. But I say it again because I like saying it was. But and then I'll talk about my favorite heckle of all that. But before all that, the reason all of this is important is because
Always building
when you go
and
back,
music.
you want to know the
I'm always
experience
building.
so that leads you to get
I get my
knowledge
rest,
stuff.
but I'm always building.
You know, and also know that, for example, like when you try to understand different original peoples, you have to know their history, right? So, Saeem coming from a Dominican background, he needs to know how they're so intellectually ignorant. You know what I'm saying? Like how they know so much and so well about wrong things. You know what I mean? And then how that leads to their own deliberate self-Europeanization, right? Because it's done in the most articulate manner, right? You know, they pontificate like the best of them, you know what I mean? But then in the opposite spectrum, Puerto Rico was made more ignorant of their own country, of their own resolve, and most of the studies, like you could find this stuff. This is what some of the things that radicalized me when I was in college. I found documents and studies about how Puerto Rican people are docile. Docile means submissive, right? And I always say that when we talk about the 85, the 10, and the 85 are not good or bad by nature. They're submissive. So just like that Syl Johnson song, any way the wind blows, it's cool with it, right? They go with wherever the wind blows, right? And I'm giving you RZA samples here. But and the 10% of those who what? They conquer. They take over by changing what is there. You know what I mean? So when they take over America, they also destroy it, and what it once was isn't what it is. And that being a 5%er is about mastering things. Right? You become a master of things. You don't destroy it, you adapt to it, but you also, and at the same time, overcome it. These kind of ways of documenting us and also teaching us that we are a docile people lead to us not thinking that we have anybody that's revolutionary, right? All the while revolution is literally happening. So there's certain books that could acquaint you with the beginnings of that. There's some hagiography in this one, but it's a fun read. You know, hagiography means like the histories are a little bit like, you know, Trump, like, you know, hyped up, you know what I mean? But there's a book called War Against All Puerto Ricans by Nelson Dennis, though. That's a great place to start, though. So even though there are some instances that he hasn't been able to show and prove completely it happened, they're really minuscule. They're like meetings with like, or particular aspects of a mayor's lifestyle, stuff like that. You know what I mean? But he kind of threw it in there. I don't know why. But as far as the oppression of Puerto Ricans, especially that transition to America, it's a great book. What's it? So as you bring Puerto Rican, those are a good place to start, and then it channels to a lot of other books. You know what I mean? And then there are small books to read and stuff like that. And you want to read about the revolutions like Pedro Albizu Campos, and stuff like that, who, as a spectrum, his speeches were more fiery than Malcolm X. Just to give a thing, he was calling for blood.
I heard that name.
You know, he was calling for blood. The Nationalist Party he wanted to go for, the first Puerto Rican to graduate from an Ivy League school. He also helped write the I forget what the title was, but the actual Irish Republic's what was it, this common Wikipedia knowledge of Wikipedia, but I forget
Peace,
what the
big
name
on
of it,
natural
but
beauty.
the
Peace,
actual
peace.
statutes of
Peace
independence,
to everyone
like
out there.
proclamations, he helped write that. You know what I mean? So this is like a man that was schooled on revolution, like he was in there from the beginning.
Wasn't he, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, wasn't he, one of the first ones that started that group of
He didn't start the macheteros. That's an outgrowth of the independence movement that comes out of the Nationalist Party. Okay?
So he didn't have nothing to do with that.
Not directly, but remember, by that time though, that macheteros start doing stuff, he's already captured and he's in prison, and they're actually doing radiation treatment on him. So in other words, they were radiating him with radiation and actually experimenting on him. So they killed him slowly as opposed to like, a bullet, or anything like that. And he wasn't alone. There were many other nationalists that were locked up with him that went through that same radiation.
Revolutionaries.
Revolutionaries, yeah. So you're gonna research a good person research Lolita Lebron, because Lebron, she's one of the ones that went into the house of what was it, the Congress, and shot in there. Her and two others, but she was the one that licked the shot. People always talk about black revolutionaries, African American, and all that, but none of them got in there that far. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to parallel that. You know what I mean? And again, later movements in the 70s, like the Young Lords, is a later movement, and many of them though became radicalized off the history that they learned. You know what I mean? But since Puerto Ricans were made citizens in 1917, they have been fighting for independence since then. So I don't think it was a docile movement, and that we just want to become a state, and that's a terrible idea. Look at Hawaii, it didn't work out. Yeah.
It made me think of somebody, Felipe Luciano, who's still around.
Yeah.
He always talks about the young lords when he was teaching on
who was a young lord,
and
is one of the great journalists of today. Yeah.
He always talks about how hard it was when he was young, trying to go back to his own people on the east side and teach them about the colorism they were telling him about is not really historically true. You're black people. And he said they fought him tooth and nail, for lack of a better phrase.
You got to remember that not even the Puerto Ricans his shade are taught that. Puerto Ricans, just like most Latinos, if they have black blood, especially in the Caribbean, we're taught that we have some black blood, but we're not black. So it's an oddball, concept. But that's where we grew up. We usually believe that. If you rebel like me, you end up somewhere else. You know what I mean? And the ones that get it more are the ones that get, soaked up into the arts. So the more African Puerto Ricans and stuff, you'll see they could be as light as us, but as light as Saim, but because they're doing salsa, they're playing conga, bongo, the culture's there, so they don't deny it, they embrace it. You know what I mean? Just like us, when we get a knowledge of stuff, we realize though, on a scientific level, that it goes beyond phenotype, right? And that the phenotype is adjustable and adaptable to the environments, right? And even sometimes altered by the environments, right? So it's important to know that Puerto Rican history though, And me, because I talk about the arts though, you should know, Puerto Rican history also through the arts too. That's why I was joking about the heckler though, but I'm serious. I wouldn't want anybody not to have any heckler on records.
Hey God, let me ask you: have you ever thought about developing like a Spaniard C lesson?
I was building with Infinite Mind though, and he's doing that.
Okay.
My Spanish is terrible.
Okay.
So I could write a Dr. Zeus book.
Well, I'm not just talking about the actual, dealing in that language, but I'm just saying, like, because
like in the framework.
And the framework, because you got English C lesson that's specifically speaking to.
Okay, the plus lesson that parallels that journey.
Right, because like it's speaking to, like you said, like black.
Journey,
right,
it is a different journey.
You know what I mean?
The science of Spanish.
It's already there, but you got to find the key. You understand? Because we always talk about are still conditional people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And you have to understand that condition. Once you really tap into the
You
condition,
see, God, yeah, see, in a lot of, for me, a lot of the degrees made sense. When they go, make that we're all different, I saw it for myself and I applied it.
Right.
But I see what you're saying, because the average person, because we do things for the 85, we write extra
Right.
things, we teach extra ways. They don't always see it that way.
No.
They're not always taking it that way.
No.
You know what I mean? And that's the problem.
Well, I'm just saying this is just to be more specific to, you know, Spanish speaking people.
Yeah,
you know.
because the 1 to 36, the type of experience in the 1 to 36 is one of a type of slavery where it is 100% dehumanizing.
right.
What people don't understand though is that probably makes it even more hypocritical. But the slavery of the Spanish Caribbean and even in South America by the Spaniards
And the
is a little
Portuguese.
bit different. You know, it's a little bit
Yes.
different. In other words,
Yes.
they didn't strip you of your humanity. So
No,
you're
they
a
didn't.
slave,
That's
but you
right.
still are a human being who will go to heaven.
Right.
You see, so when they finally overcome slavery, in the psyche of the individual, that Latino is not himself as a subhuman
Right.
who is allowed to be free. He sees himself, though, if he can continue to be Europeanized, right? He sees himself as someone who overcame a situation. You know what I mean? Just like, you know, somebody goes to jail, though, it's a horrible experience, but they don't go like, hey, I'm a jail.
Big self-elevation.
You know, nobody does that. You know, nobody's going, I'm a jail person. You know, I'm a person that went through jail. So they see it as like an experience that they went through, but they are not of that place.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a national of jail. You know what I mean? Whereas this allows the making of nations in Latin America and the Latin Caribbean to actually embrace the nationhood that they're coming from.
Yeah.
So they can embrace being Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Puerto Rican literally
Because
means
their
rich
culture,
port.
their
Right?
culture is
So that's
still
the other
intact.
part. San Juan is what they called it. Give it a religious name, San Juan. But Puerto Rico wasn't really being used by the Spaniards so much as a place to congregate and live with as much importance as Cuba. Cuba was really that port. And that's why music and the interaction between Cuba and New Orleans is so crucial to culture.
Yeah.
Because those are if you want to study music, that shows you a lot of the history, that intersection there. All the music of today is from those two regions, and they intersect and overlap. But Puerto Rico wasn't using them, they just collected their riches. So they go, where are you going? I'm going to Puerto Rico. I'm going to Richport. I'm going to Richport. So eventually the whole island called Richport. So basically named after being booty for the Spaniards. Literally.
Yeah, you know, when John Honey Hunkers did them trips and he sailed out, did he go to Puerto Rico too?
From what I know, no.
Nope.
No, because his research wasn't in the Americas. His research was in Africa.
Right.
Because remember, the white man is still outnumbered 11-1.
Yep.
He is still even up till then, he is developing his population by converting those that he makes half original, meaning changes their mindset and saying, you're not one of them anymore, you're one of us now. Or you could be something totally different. You know, you could be something never done before or whatever, right? And by the way, that's why Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams is such a crucial book, because he builds on that a lot in that
Yes,
book.
they do.
You know, that's mainly how Africa was conquered, through that mentality of the inbreeding. Because remember, all of Africa, that's mainly matriarchal societies.
Right.
So once you get into the woman, you're in. And you see, that's why a lot of the East, they still deal with things matrilineally. That's why, for example, even with the white man, you see the Jews? If your mother's not Jew, you ain't a Jew anymore.
That's right.
So they'll take you if a Jew marries a Gentile, they're cool. But if it's a woman, if the woman's Jew, but if it's the other way around, then they're like, you ain't a Jew. They have a lot of issues, even if they go out of their way and embrace their Jewish culture, they still have that feeling like you're not really a Jew like
You're not
that.
a Jew.
You're not official.
Right.
You're not official. You know,
Right.
and us, because we were, literally, it's interesting. Our peoples were conquered. All of us in different places. If you notice, our lineage, we no longer deal with ourselves matrilineally either.
No.
Now, I'm not saying that's the correct way to go either. I think that the ways that societies have been conquered is because the imbalance, either patriarchally or matrilineally. You know what I mean? They're both imbalances. You know what I mean? Like for example, the United States acts as a patriarchal country. You know what I mean? So it is violent. It is offensive, pre-offensive. You know what I mean? It conquers before anyone will attack it. You know? So all of these could be negative, but I'm totally forgetting what was the original question that you had. But I know I answered something.
No, I asked you John Hart and all.
Right, yeah. I do want to finish that. Yeah, thank you for taking me back there. So John, I hate him so much. I forget. Right? John Modi Hawkins was mainly trying to get that pop. He's not going to go into Africa and collect slaves. Okay. So he has to convince a populace there. So like in that 1 to 36, some of the interorientation isn't just to collect. To fool slaves to get on the ship, potential slaves to get on the ship. A lot of that interorientation, right? And remember, interorientation is what? Technically, it is two people that speak a different language, and only that language, so they don't speak their language. And one group is bringing an idea that is unheard of to the other group. That's what interorientation is. It's a very old word that isn't used anymore, even in sociological texts today. But you know, if you go through Google, you can find it in very old books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an awkward word.
It only mean one thing.
You know what I mean? It's so specific. Nobody uses
That's
it.
all it means. That's all it means, I promise. What y'all can find
So the conversation of the interorientation is also to collect slave catchers as well, and to make a populace that will make themselves more mighty or protect themselves and their population of particular tribe, right? By collecting others. You know what I mean? And then you have all the underhanded stuff that goes with that. Weapons, arms, all that kind of stuff. Promises of trade and all that. Right? Because it's an intricate three-way system. Right? And
see, it wasn't no the selling from them now. They captured you. Now it was where they kidnapped you at.
right.
You know, yeah. Now,
Yeah,
and our own did that to us.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't have just the populace of whites to do that. You know what I mean? Remember, it took them a while to even figure out that they needed vitamin C on a long trip. Or else they would get scurvy, which is like skin disease. I mean, that's where you get the word limeys from. Because they would realize that when they had extra limes, they wouldn't get scurvy. So imagine a trip with slaves that are packed up on top of each other, and they're taking, about
9 months to a year, voyages,
voyages that's taking that long. 2 hours. What they consider their product, though, about 60-70% of it is dying. And it doesn't even matter because they convinced that population, right, already, so they're getting so many that they don't even need to worry about that. So it wasn't even a thing where they're like, we got to take care of them a little bit better because we're losing most of our inventory. No business today would survive if you lost, like, imagine a food business where you lost 70% of your product as it shipped to your store. You know, you'd be broke. You know what I mean? And that's why also when we think about the business of it all and why the Civil War is more important though in the North is because all of the finances, all of the strategies of it are actually in Wall Street, not in the South. You know, the South is basically where you have it all happening, but the real masterminds are in the North, and that's why they were able to say with industrialization, slavery is not going to work. You know, and now we have a system where we don't even have to hire them, right? We can abuse new, lower totem pole whites to come in, and we don't even have to have room and board for them, and we don't have to worry about any kind of uprising, right? Because the uprising became it became a thing that was challenging the comforts of life, right? Because the actual, slave holding families, they were not comfortable, and the white woman in the plantation wasn't comfortable with that possibility, But I say all that to say this, right? When we go back into indigenous histories and all that, you need to see the intersections. I wanted to talk about also, it's important that we know about, the challenges and the clashes of our people today. Indigenous people that directly to their indigenous roots, right? See, that's why sometimes with the knowledge of self, the Latin Caribbeans, are easier to get this knowledge of self because we have not only blatant African blood that we can identify, but also African rituals that we can do. If you go to Mexico, you go to other places in the Caribbean, like let's say like in places like Ecuador and stuff like that, where they play cajon and they play drums like that. You could always say, oh, that drum looks differently. It doesn't look like the typical African drum. You know what I mean? People, in other words, because people when you're oppressed and you brainwash yourself, you can really absolve. You can make an excuse for anything. Like you can take away everything. But in the Latin Caribbean, it is extremely difficult. You know what I mean? Like even though no matter how much Dominicans do it though, there's nothing blacker than the tambora. You know what I mean? Like anything is resting on you and you're hitting with a hand and a stick.
I love first instrument.
And it's two different rhythms with the same hand. It's a polyrhythmic drum. So you can't even be average with it. Right? And you can't even be average with it. You know what I mean? And the thing about it is when we're going back into our histories, like the indigenous here in the Americas, right, in the United States, they have a big issue with the recent wave, and I say recent, it's really, I'm talking about like the 80s and 90s, where the black books were translated, and they became more popular, like the African origin civilization, things like that. And they have issue with the Afrocentric literature. My problem with Afrocentric is that they didn't finish. They were so obsessed with proving that everything started in Africa that they didn't continue to keep studying and keep writing about everything that passes. Because these were the goals of the first wave, like the Sertimas and everything was like, we're trying to prove these origins to show that we started civilization and then we always had something worthy. But it was for other scholars to continue that work, but also to further it and continue. What was the original people doing now? Not just 50,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, but also 5, 4, and so on and so on. And this is stuff that gets lost or not delved into by that Afrocentric wave. You just get stuck with origin histories, right? So the other populaces of indigenous today, they have real issues because they already see themselves as different, obviously. So they think, oh, look, the Africans are just African people, African Americans and so on. They're just trying to take away our history. So then what they do is that they end up saying something that shows even props up the European on a scale that is even more outlandishly high, just to show that they aren't coming from Africa. And that they weren't just given everything. Because that's how they're reading it. And unfortunately, most of the people that get radicalized by reading ancient history books, our brothers and sisters, they're reading these things and not reading it with good understanding. So they often say that Africans didn't come over to the Americas until the European brought them. Which also means what? And I've told some indigenous groups, they're like, what you're also saying though, is that you also didn't have contact with the outside world either. So until the great unifier is the European. He's the one that held hands across America, across the world. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's the one that brought all the world together. That's what you just said by saying that. And they're like, no, but they're trying to say that they did this, they did that. And I'm like, that Olmec head is pretty obvious. And I tell them like that Olmec head, they hate Sertima, and then they're African Americans that trump up or say it wrong, don't have the understanding. They're reading it wrong. A lot of the indigenous brothers and sisters I find today aren't reading it at all. Because Sertima, for example, said that the Olmecs though were not just African, like directly from Africa. He would say that they were a mixture of indigenous that were already here, that had the old Africans come and become part of the society and added on so much that they were revered as an add-on to the society. I don't know what pages they're reading. You know what I'm saying? But they're clearly not getting the understanding, And one of the problems though is that all of this literature's out there, and then we still look at things and say we're all different. Like, for example, David Himmeltep's book has a very catchy title, The First Americans Were Africans, but it's also a controversial title. Because when you look at the histories that he's giving, he's trying to show that everything originates from there. We're all from that same place. So we're all just a mixture of different original people from different times, different generations, different experiences, and even different phenotypes over those times. That's what the indigenous here is. That's what the indigenous here is once the white man comes here. So there was already traveling between, there was already the Atlantic coast current was already navigated, all of that kind of stuff. And they had ships that could do all of that, right? So, all of this though, let me just summate this. All of that is crucial. So you want to research immediate Puerto Rican history. You see? So even New York City history, young lords, all that stuff. You might want to read Mickey Melendez, who's one of the famous young lords, who I learned with. He wrote about the young lords, one of the best books. He was like he led really like the military branch of the young lords, you know what I mean? Tough brother right there. And he wrote a great book about the young lords itself. You want to read works by Juan Gonzalez, who was a young lord as well. And he often co-hosts Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, but he's written a lot of great books on Latin American history that are crucial just to get a context, you know what I mean? Also written probably one of the best books on original peoples, black, brown, yellow, the history of us through American media, like our portrayal, our experiences, and also how we made media in the history. It's a great book.
The history of us.
It's called News for All the People.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a great book.
By
Juan Gonzalez.
Juan Gonzalez.
Yeah. You know, he was a young lord too. That's why I mentioned that. That's a great book. Very interesting read. There's no book like that. So the research he did was one of its kind. You know, it was one of its kind.
I had that book before about the young lords.
Well, there's a couple of books from the young lords. You know what I mean? And there's a couple
They were
of
like they were like dressed like Black Panthers.
similar. Yeah.
Brother
But
mentions.
there was a lot of solidarity. You know what I mean? They didn't see, if you lived in those times, they didn't see the movements as different peoples. You know, they saw themselves as, in the same struggle and of the same peoples. You know?
True 120 says One on All Puerto Ricans by Nelson Dennis.
I mentioned that book.
You did mention that, okay.
Yeah. And I also mentioned the pitfalls in that book as well.
Pitfalls.
Because there's some things that he doesn't give great references to. But I find that the parts of the book that he doesn't give good reference to are some of the personal histories. You know what I mean? And because I know where Nelson Dennis got a lot of his information, I know that these are probably like first-hand information that he was getting. So it's almost similar to like the books of the gods that we write about the beginnings of the nation. You know what I mean? They're not going to have reference material. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not going to have, oh look, this is from Firstborn Prince, the anthologies. You know what I mean? Like,
Anthologies.
right? It's not going to be from that. You know what I mean? It's going to be from your own first-hand research. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's not the ideal book about Puerto Rican history, but it's the first one to really summate the gravity and the reality of oppression that we're in today. Because a lot of people think about our histories and think that it's all good. Like, we'll just be made a state and it'll be all good. That doesn't alleviate anything. If you know anything, just research Hawaii. A state that doesn't, make things better. You know, it could make things worse. You know, but
I just know the basic about the Taínos. how they
right.
were living.
But now that we're dealing with this knowledge of self, you have a knowledge of yourself, though. You absolutely have to see that
More beyond that.
as no good, an incomplete history. You have to get more. You know what I'm saying? You have to know how to piece things together. You know what I mean? You have to know how to piece things together, though. You have to see yourself in the context of all of this, not only ancient history, but immediate recent history, and how that intersects also with African American history, because it does, right? One of the best blatant examples, the Arturo Schomburg Center, you know what I mean? Who was a Puerto Rican who was really a bibliophile, and he really collected so much literature. Having a library named after him is just like the only logical thing.
Okay, because in one of the part, a certain town over there in Puerto Rico called Loiza, that's where they was taking all, the majority of people there, they from African descent, because that's where they was taking as slaves to that particular part. So I know about that, you know. But I have to do better research on that too, because I know that's where the African roots come from.
Schomburg was from Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Puerto
Yeah.
Rican,
He
yeah.
wrote The New Negro during the so-called Harlem Renaissance.
Right.
Sunez, can I ask a question about the Cuban Revolution? I've read where people have described it, parts of it as like almost a black revolution. In a sense,
You mean Fidel's?
Fidel and Che. And you know, I'm not trying to be funny, but they look like light-skinned brothers to me. Could they just relate?
And they definitely were, yeah.
Could they just relate to it?
Well, look, first,
Or,
yeah, Che Guevara wasn't Argentinian,
right.
but the motorcycle diaries, right? Those reference to his experience, really getting radicalized by a journey through Latin America.
Right.
You know, so like, think about it. Like, even today, you probably wouldn't take a motorcycle and drive through South America. Not a good idea. You know what I mean? And he, right?
Definitely not central, but
Yeah, you're dead like immediately. And he actually survived, and his experiences radicalized him to realize that he's indigenous. Because where he's coming from, though, he didn't have to be accept that. You know, even though he doesn't come from the rich class, as some people try to say, you know, which isn't true. You know, Fidel's upbringing is from a richer class, but not ultra rich. Okay, so like Fidel wasn't like, you know, basking in money, but it's important to know that he had some money, and compared to the place where he lived, he was basically ended up being like the son of the richest person there. You know what I'm saying? In a place that's not that wealthy, but his father was running a lot of the business there. You know what I'm saying? So he actually was radicalized just by disagreeing with his father's methods. You know? And he became a lawyer, right? These guys. He became a lawyer and became extremely schooled, right? And radicalized. And that also included fighting for the indigenous, fighting for the African. Any revolution, if you describe any aspect of the Fidel's revolution, it absolutely is an African revolution because he redistributed the entire landscape. So about 80% of the people didn't have land. Redistributed all of that where everyone had some kind of land, right? So not only did he do that, but he also kicked out all of the companies. He kicked out Chase Bank, all that kind of stuff, you know. And people say it was like a flyby as he goes, but I think it was much more systematic. I think he was socialist from the very get. He was exposing his socialism slowly, though. You know, it wasn't like he was declaring that immediately, because really in the beginning, the U.S. thought that they just were flip-flopping dictators. You know, we get Manuel Noriega, we get somebody else. You know how they just flip-flop. They eventually found out that that's not what was happening with Fidel. So to say that Fidel's revolution is a black revolution is absolute. You know, is absolute. When people look at it and don't see it that way, it's because over the years, bureaucracy and also the blockade has ruined the revolution so much that they had to go into industries of capitalism, and unfortunately, one of the most racist industries automatically to stay afloat, which is tourism. Tourism is always going to be racist, though. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, white people today vacation, they don't want to vacation and see other blacker people waiting on them hand and foot. And it always serves them best, though, if the lightest Cubans can wait on them. Okay? It also the the monies that get sent from Miami to Cuba, right? Because he kicked out all of the well-to-do Cubans, and the way he redistributed, right? He even redistributed people that had moderate wealth, but had businesses, right? And if people weren't agreeing with that, they were fleeing too. Okay? That includes even musicians, but musicians is a little different. Okay? Musicians were hustling because Cuban music became so formulaic and robotic because they were really performing and making great money among white audiences. So that you get your pure rumba, right, with all of its wonderful drumming, congas, bongo,
That's where the mambo came
timbalero,
from,
all
right?
that, and then you get the mutations, the mambo, you know what I mean, and cha cha cha, right? So, real quick, right, clave, right? That's your timing, right? Everything. If you listen to any son, salsa, all of that, you're gonna hear it somewhere in there. You won't hear it in a Mark Anthony song because most of salsa today is out of tune and sloppy and you know it doesn't matter.
I was gonna ask you about the Che.
All right, let me go back to Che.
Uh-huh.
But say that. Let me finish my hate toward cha cha cha. But this is where you get the Perez Parado and wearing ruffled shirts and strapping the conga all that disgusting stuff. But the mambo was a way to actually make it danceable for whites, though. So conga line, cha 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 cha. That's all it is. And it's really whack. You know what I mean? So, and then of course, son is the root of what salsa becomes. Okay, you add the free improvisation of jazz, and then you also add in the a lot more lyrical abrasiveness, and also musical sloppiness. I know that sounds funny, but musicians taking chances, that's what becomes salsa. That's why a lot of Cubans,
Space
they hate on
got
people
saying.
that
Yeah, do down. God, sharp.
That's where
because they're bougie. Like, oh, that's just, it's really not.
that's where it originated from.
Right. It's similar to people saying that jazz is just the blues. And really the better statement though is that you should say that all jazz has to have the blues in it. Okay? So sometimes great jazz might not be the greatest to you because it doesn't have that blues in it. Like to me, Dave Brubeck made a classic album. If you look him up, you'll see. But it doesn't have the blues in it. You know what I mean? Whereas, Duke and Miles and all that, their works have the blues in it. You know what I mean? That anguish, that hurt, that pain, But when we look at all that, Che Guevara though became radicalized and he encountered Fidel.
He was his brother?
No. Fidel was Cuban, he was Argentinian. They met along the way as revolutionaries on the path. But you have to remember that all of Latin America was going through some kind of revolution. That's why in the early 1900s, the 1800s, when they talk about America dealing with its, backdoor and, handling Latin America, we're quelling Latin America. That's why all the way through the whole 80s, though, you have Reagan with the Iran-Contras and all that. You go, how the hell does that have to do with Nicaragua? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because all of this was to stop revolutions that were going on in Latin America. Okay? And then now, what's the fruit about all that? Well, when you go to the store and you get your quinoa, you get your acai berries, right? Now we got all these nice Latin American foods and stuff because you can easily go in there, you know what I mean? And do what you want, though. Of course, they try to be fair trade and stuff, whatever, but these wonderful, and mind you, I'm a victim to that. I love my yerba mate. I can't live without it. That was Che Guevara's drink, by the way, But Che Guevara was a revolutionary. And he was interacting with any revolution that he could find. So was Fidel, and that's where their heart was. And when when Fidel had problems in Cuba and couldn't set it off, he actually went to other places and they intersected.
Yeah, Wise Ruler said they met when Fidel got kicked out of Cuba before the revolution.
He didn't get technically kicked out, but he was like, if I stay here, I'll get killed. So yeah, I guess you could say. So that's where he met him, yeah. So they encountered revolutions everywhere. They were in Mexico, they were in other places. And then they decided, though, that's why they call it the July 26th movement, because that was their first try at it, which was a fail, by the way. You know what I mean? And I'm fast forwarding a lot of stuff. But when Fidel was first captured, he wrote his famous speech called "History Will Absolve Me." It's an 80-page speech. So, like they talk about making movies and all this kind of stuff. He went up in the courts there and did this 80-page speech. And no one, with Fidel, he memorized this. He wasn't reading this. You know what I mean? He said this speech. He wrote it and he said it. It won him his freedom. They had to free him. And then that speech was printed and circulated, and that became a thing. But Fidel's mentality was always about the indigenous and the African roots and upholding that. It also was about toppling the hold of religion. So for years, though, throughout Fidel's reign, there was no nationally mandated religion. That's why if you study Cuban history, it's a big deal, they say, like when the Pope went there. Because Fidel wasn't trying to he didn't want any iconicizing. You know what I mean? The only person that he had was Che Guevara, and he wouldn't have anything with Che Guevara up if it didn't have any of the principles attached to it. So the education system became a way of teaching about the principles that Che had. Now Che Guevara, though, he died because he tried to take revolution to another country. But he went to other places. The Congo was a place that he went.
Right.
But he had no success. And he felt that they didn't really want it. Right? Which is very common. Like, people could say that they're oppressed, but it don't mean that they want to set it off like that. Or they're ready to just start shooting. You know? And it was similar where he died. You know what I mean? Because, they pretty much were, the locals were pretty much snitching, to save their hide because they were scared. And then once, his peoples had to start eating their own horses, though, they were goners, They didn't have to, you have to wait, military history 101, they teach you this, I took military history, 101, you have to win the hearts and minds of the people, you know what I mean? Obviously that rule, America does horrible, they never really win the hearts and minds of the people, but if you really think about it though, America's goal since Vietnam hasn't been to win a war. It's just, the goal has been to be at war, not to win a war. So you don't have to win the hearts and minds of people if you just want to consistently stay at war. You know what I mean? It's a big difference, That's why they don't have to win a war. Let's just stay at war forever, Right? And then you get mutations of that, like disaster capitalism and things like that. Right? But again, the ultimate premise, your work is added to you if you were coming from a different country. I don't care where you're coming from. You need to know that history. If you came from South Carolina, I want you to know some history about South Carolina. I want you to know about their flag, their national state flag, all this kind of stuff. You need to know where you're coming from. You need to be able to put an entire, you need to put a line and go everywhere. Because the reason that we get confused is because there's gaps in the history. But those gaps get bigger if you know some history and then you're missing gaps that just happen. Right? Even with your own family, you have to be honest and say, at some point with your children, when they get old enough, this is your family history. This is where you came from. These are the things I did right, wrong, and this is how you came to be like this. This is what you have to deal with, And it's funny because when you grow, especially knowing Latin American history or Latino history is important because that's the greatest, I think, that is where the greatest form of brainwashing came from. Okay? The Spaniards weren't the greatest at monetizing their systems. And that's why the British became the world power. And they were more ruthless with the slave. But the Spaniards ended up becoming great at brainwashing. And that's where the Spanish Inquisition comes from. So all the things that the British do, like burning witches at the stake, that comes from the Spaniards. Because the Spaniards were saying, when they first had to before they could be a world power, they had to get rid of the original people there that gave them civilization, because they didn't have it. And that was the Moors. Yeah. So they had to push everything down south into Andalusia, and then have everybody deny that they have any kind of Islamic background. All of the churches there are some of the most beautiful churches you'll see, because those Christian churches are churches built on top of mosques. Right? And so you're not going to find anything like that in the whole world. You know what I mean? And the Spanish Inquisition leads people to not to deny their religion, their history of where they come from, and their roots. Even today, when you see things about the Spaniard, they still speak negatively about, flamenco and the musics that are African based and stuff, you know? And by the way, I always say this because I love to say, flamenco is a beautiful music though. It doesn't sound good to us though, unless you listen to it a long time, because they don't use the West African meter, right? Classic West African meter is James Brown, like the drum, you know, right? Funky drummer, you know, like that's classical. It's all West African. Theirs is a little different, so they clap, and we're like, she's clapping all at the wrong place. You know what I mean? It's more East African rooted. You know what I mean? And it goes to show you though that, you know, you have to continue to see yourself as totally ignorant of so many things that we don't know about. You know what I mean? And that's why your questions have to always be sharp. So, in the Spanish Inquisition, they led themselves to believe that they are not of any Moorish ancestry. They don't have any, definitely no Islamic ancestry, and they kept that quiet. Even which isn't, I think isn't done in the 90s, which is a great visual. When the Moors ruled Europe, if you watch that on BBC, I always suggest that because it's good to get a visual. It helps when you read books by Saturnalia, like the Golden Age of the Moor and all that.
I wish I would have brought a notebook like him so I could have been writing on it.
Well, again, look, I'm going to
Well, you can watch it right here. You know, again, you can put it on repeat.
If Mecca say to you, but when I got knowledge of stuff, I sat here in a beach chair because there was only beach chairs here, right? All I had was small notebooks, and I copied down everything. So much so that Firstborn Prince used to laugh at me and say, "He say everything. He write down all the shit I say." And then I wrote down that too. Because I'm not saying like, yo, everybody's gonna die, but I was like, yo, I might be the only one that ever, you know, one of the few that meet him, you know? And then I was like, knowledge be told me that I have to teach everybody that I know in my family. So I knew that I possibly might be the only one that ever met him or meets him. And the truth is that I was. In my family, my immediate family, I'm the only one that ever met Firstborn Prince. And he's like a historical figure. So I treat him just like the musicians I write about. You know what I'm saying? And the musicians that have passed away that I know. You know what I mean? So, look, if you want to be a great student, you have to get two things. I'll take a little detour here, right? You have to get better at chronicling everything that you're seeing. That's why I tell you to have a journal. You have to chronicle everything you see. You don't realize how much you're seeing unless you start writing about everything you saw. You know what I mean? And you don't have to remember everything. There's a reason that I have great recall. It's because I keep writing everything, right? You saw I was writing down a whole bunch of stuff. That's and I spent years without writing. And that's my 53rd journal. And I've been writing these journals since 98. And I probably spent like maybe almost like 5-6 years without writing in them.
Between 98 and now, 5-6 years?
Yeah. And that was only because different periods that add up to about 7-8 years. Probably 7-8 years, because one of them was because I got knowledge of self. And now I felt like with so much I was learning, I just couldn't keep up. Right? And I was writing in other notebooks instead of the journal. But then there was a lot of years where I was writing so many things and publishing so many things that I was just like, man, I don't know how to balance it too. Even though that's whatever I write and you read, if it's good, it's because I practiced there. You know what I mean? That's my Kobe book. You know what I'm saying? Those are the Kobe books. You know, that's the Kobe gym. You know, that's how you write. You know, that's how you perfect a craft. But there's so many things that you don't realize what you're seeing, what you're remembering. And what happens is that you could melt things that you were going to question, and then they become historically noted in your brain as a truth, as opposed to an observation. And that's where it becomes a flaw. Okay? So a lot of things you can dissect and say, I learned this, but I don't know this. That's where a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? A lot of thoughts, ideas. Peace, God.
Peace.
Who is that mystery God?
Peace.
Right? So always having that journal. I still have those first notebooks of when I still have my first assignment. My first assignment was to write an essay, because Nazmi knew I was a writer, so he made me write a whole bunch of stuff. Why am I the original? And he told me straight up, a lot of people won't see it. You know what I'm saying? So Saeem comes up and builds. He got to do work extra hard though. You know what I'm saying? right? And that's it, because, we'll be better at it if you're gonna make us work harder at it, right?
Mhm.
Because no one with knowledge of self should look in the mirror. Kasim, you shouldn't look in the mirror and goes, I'm black, I'm in a degree. It's over. You know what I mean? Like I say, you prove that you're the true and living God, and you take a selfie, the arrogance, you know what I mean? It's true, but it's not, you know what I mean? But you want to do two things. I'm saying two things that will make you sharp. It feels robotic. You have to write about your life. You have to write about the things you think. I don't care who you are. If you don't think you're a writer, trust me, some of the greatest books that we have in history are from people that weren't writers. Okay?
I mean, everything.
One of the most,
Right, everything.
everything that you think ought to be written down. And pick a person you're speaking to, either in the future or your grandkids, whoever they would be. But
That's deep.
I'm forgetting his name, and that's because my sister took it from me, this book. I always forget his name. But he lived around the time that the flag was made. By the way, the Puerto Rican flag was made in New York City, because this is where they convened, right? I'm forgetting his name. Shame on me. But he wasn't like a writer. But he knew that these times were crucial because he felt revolution coming, even though it didn't happen. You know what I mean? So he would write about things. He even wrote in his journal that he's not going to write about females and that he's dealing with, or right? And I was like, so made a real saucy book, but it added like 100 extra pages and break up all this boring fight for freedom stuff. You know what I mean? But he wrote that early journal is like, if you go to any Puerto Rican history studies course, Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College, that's one of the rare documents of what it was like to be a Puerto Rican in New York City in the early 1900s. Because it's not like a lot of people wrote like that, and that they even saved it, or it was archived or saved in some way that it could be published. I gotta get his name though. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. I gotta go get this book back. That's a goal. But the point being though is that you have that. But then the other thing is this. To even do stuff like that is an add-on in time. You have to be able to gauge what you were doing and have real actual goals. Right? I'll give you an example. When I tell you to read books and I read 52 books a year and you're like, yes, blah, blah. What an asshole. He reads 52, he's still this kid, right? But I'm not reading 52 books and going, week 1 is over. Check. Right? I finished it. Books are different sizes and shit, right? And then sometimes I'm behind because I'm like, I don't feel like reading a book, that is shorter. I want to read this book, it's more fun. You know what I mean? Or then sometimes I'm not reading because I'm writing or whatever it is, right? The thing is though, is that every single day I have goals for each and every single day, and they get checks if they get completed, and they don't. They get left blank if they're not. You have to make a calendar of what you intend to do. So
that's a way of holding yourself accountable.
yeah,
really.
in my calendar, every single day I'm supposed to read 50 pages. Now you multiply that, right? Now, take away one day, because on Saturday, I only read, my goal on Saturday is to read, I'll just give you an idea. You know how I feel like long books are like 600, 700 pages? If they're too boring to continuously read like that, I break those up and read like a chapter's worth every Saturday. So usually these books break up to like 50 chapters. So there's like 4 books that I'm reading that way. So like on Saturday, I'll read one part of each of those 4 books. But all the other 6 days, I absolutely have to read at least 50 pages. They don't have to be from the same book and stuff, as long as I get through 50 pages.
So you just do 50 pages? No,
Yeah.
you're not
And
like,
so
I'm
if
gonna
I'm
do 2
not-
hours today.
Every day.
So just like 50 pages.
50 pages of whatever.
Is it at least 50 pages or 50 pages? Sometimes you may read more than that, or
minimum.
the minimum.
Yeah,
the minimum.
Yeah, like yesterday I read 65. Today I've only read 50.
Okay.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Because I wanted to write something. So once I got to the 50 one, I was like, but when I go home, I'll probably read more. You know what I mean? Because at night I'll read more fun books like biographies and stuff like that. Right? But and I have a lot of biographies. So I read them all at the same time. So if I feel like hearing funk, I'll probably go read my George Clinton book, his biography. But when I'm reading Duke Ellington's biography, Billie Holiday, I have them all open. It's all in the process of being read. And even Frank Sinatra, I have all his major books. Because they wrote a lot of books about Frank Sinatra. So there's a two-part 700-page biography about him. So that's 1,400 pages. But then I'm reading this just for the format of it. There's a book about Frank Sinatra that only talks about his music, which is saying a lot though, because this guy lived all types of crazy shit and mad drama, but only about his music. And of course, as a music writer, I want to see how they piece that together. Right? Just about his music, you know. Most people can't write about his music without talking about things that he did, you know. So I was curious, right? But that's an acquired taste though. Everybody's like, oh, I know he wasn't original. He was Frank Sinatra. I did that on purpose though. See which troll I get today though. You know what I mean? Right? But
Yeah, shout out to the trolls.
yeah, they're so dope, you know. But what you want to do is you want to make an outline of things. In my journal though, I write at least 20.
20 pages a day.
No, 20 pages a week, which is very low.
20 pages a
But
week.
because I write so many other things, if I get creative ideas, which I always do, that's the first thing I ditch. So I have to make sure I write about in that. You know what I mean?
Now, how do you keep up with? Do you write them digitally or do you write them pen?
No, everything I write is digital except the journal. For some reason, I just like that.
Doing a journal and writing it down.
Yeah. I even have a type of pen that I use. I use the Bic, but wider Bic. I only write with the Bic that is. They have a pen that's 1.6 millimeter.
You know, because I find it like I have like a different relationship to writing in the book versus digitally.
Yeah, when I write creatively, which is everything else, everything I write, even if it's technical, I need to piece things like a puzzle. So in my mind, things look like puzzle pieces. So when I write, they look like puzzles. So it's so much easier digitally, where I can put things and take out things and the way it looks. In the book, I could just continue to go. If I write something that like, wow, that was dope, I actually do this squiggly line on the side. So if I'm like, I need an idea, let me see what I just said. Those squiggly lines that I put on the side margins, that's where the hot shit is. And then it just jacks my own shit. You know what I mean? So everything is my own shit, you know? But that's how I write, you know what I mean?
Real quick, Queen Divine Zia says, has anyone else in your family gained knowledge of self?
My entire family has lived out aspects of what I've taught. That's more important to me. So they're civilized. They will never eat pork around me. My siblings don't eat pork. My twin brother is vegan. My twin brother, I took him through 120 where he memorized it. He definitely doesn't remember.
He doesn't remember it.
You know what I mean? But if I speak to him about thoughts I have that might, just naturally go into my dialect, like the way I'm saying things, I don't have to like fix it for him. What I meant was that in our jargon, we said, I don't have to do that with my brother and sister, like they know where I'm coming from. So in that length that they are, but they're definitely civilized. Like they're not like, hey Sunez, can you stay in the corner here? I'm gonna go to the Gucci Frito and get they're food wise it was easier because me and my siblings were all like, we all got off dairy for certain reasons, right? So that was the first thing that we got rid of. So after you get rid of good cakes and treats, though, you can get rid of anything else. I got rid of dairy before pork. But I did get rid of pork. Okay? That way they don't soundbite me. They show me soundbite. I just said I eat pork if I just cut that out, though, right? They probably asked the God, can you cut that up for me? Have the guy cut it up, But so my family, like my old earth, when she was alive, she was appreciative that I didn't look for any mystery to get me out of a situation. Because that's how she thought of things. You know what I mean?
So she wasn't religious at all then?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So
and my old earth hated the cross. She hated the cross and absolutely hated the cross when they put the guy on the stick too. She thought that was morbid. She thought it was gruesome. You know what I mean? So
was that like because that sounds more like a Jehovah's Witness thing, Or
No,
from
no,
out
I mean, we
from,
grew
right
up,
from?
cliche Catholic, you know what I mean?
No, exactly. Yeah, I know
She
Puerto
just-
Ricans have
Yeah,
a
she
Catholic
just hated
background.
the cross and, she thought it was a death symbol. And I didn't
Yes.
disagree with her because
Yes.
the guy died on it, that's all they tell you about it, so.
Right.
He died, and she hated, and my father was always atheist, just because he hated doing shit. So you don't want to do no church stuff, and when it was Good Friday and you don't eat meat, he was buying us chuck steak on purpose, like doing that kind of rebellion was like really dope to me, so it radicalized me, because I'm like, yeah, we're going against the church, you know what I mean, like F you to the church, it was dope, he'd be like, the priest is probably eating chuck steak, son, so we're gonna do us,
Hey.
You might got a condom before I got here?
but yeah,
That's like when people wear ash. Put the ash was the ash.
Oh,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
I'm like, what is that?
See,
Blunt
my-
ash? That's blunt
my
ash
wife
right
went
there.
to- she would go to Palm Sunday. She would
Oh my
go to
God.
church on Palm Sunday to get the palms, change the palms on the back of our beds, and then never go to church again. Just because she wanted like something, something. But she didn't like going to church. She didn't like, people being nosy, all that kind of stuff. So she just didn't like church environment and the church camaraderie.
Okay, so the queen says, do they still celebrate the European holidays, and how do you deal with that? I ask because my family is Catholic and they refuse to stop believing in the spook in the sky.
Well,
Need some advice.
Yeah. The best advice though is to do what you do, and then one of the reasons that my way of life ends up not imposing on them, but ends up being, given to them by osmosis, is because they can do anything that they want to, and I still do me. So
You gotta be a better example.
I'm still being God, and there's all types of pig around me, all this kind of stuff, and need everything is around me, and I'm still like, I don't eat that. It's all, you do what you want though. Even in my head, I'm like grossed out. I'm about to upchug because it sounds horrible to me, right?
So they still have it around you, but
Right. Even though that's my extended family, my immediate family, they didn't really cook a lot of pork.
okay.
And but again, it wasn't radical reasons. My father just doesn't want to smell like a spick. That's what he said.
Yo.
So he didn't want to smell like a totone outside. He didn't want to smell like you know what I'm saying? Oh look, I don't want to smell like a chuleta outside. So he wouldn't have that in the house, though. You know what I mean? If he did, it was like he wasn't going outside. He had to air out forever, and so like in the winter we're freezing because he's got to air out the house. You know what I mean? So if we had things like that, then we have to suffer freezing in the winter like that. But that's what he was. That's what he was about. It was, like I said, my household was totally different. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of stuff was allowed in my household because my mom was very against us engaging in the arts. And what's funny is that all three of us ended up being in the arts somehow. We all became. My brother's an actor and a screenwriter. My sister did television and radio. And I'm a writer and poet, all that kind of shit. So we didn't really do what she
Well,
said.
she didn't want you to be a part of the art. So
No, not at all. It's always a waste of time. You know what I mean? It's always a waste of time.
wow.
Starving writer.
She just wanted me to write. Write. So she.
But that's an art though. That's,
Yeah.
Right.
But you couldn't tell that.
That's a high art.
If I wrote a poem for her, when she would see the things I wrote, she would say I was writing too how. Like I was writing sloppy and stuff. Because I break all the rules after I know the rules, so I was writing wrong to her, you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, I am, but,
Was she a writer?
what?
Was she a writer?
No, not like that. No. She just knew that, like, she wanted us to speak English and write perfectly. So no one would make fun of us.
Speak
But
English
she
and write
had a
perfectly.
very, overt Puerto Rican accent, and it took a long time to learn English, you know what I mean? Remember back in the 60s, they didn't go, look, oh, you don't know English, you're in ESL. They didn't have that shit. They said, listen, you're gonna fail if you don't get this English down. So if she comes here at 14, you're thrust into high school, we have to learn English immediately. They don't give a damn. So she's like, I gotta watch this TV ASAP. Because when you watch a soap, you kind of could figure out what's going on. And the cheesier the story, the easier you could figure it out. So that's how she got into soaps and all that kind of, the American soaps, you know? But, yeah, that was like, but what I would say is this, right? some of the holidays, I will admit though that Thanksgiving, my whole life I've gotten out of it though. I started teaching this class in 2000 though, so I've been able to get out of that forever. You know what I mean? But a lot of times I don't go see my family the entire Thanksgiving weekend. You know what I mean? It's a holiday that I abhor, so unless people bear witness to it, I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? It's about immediate history to me. With Christmas and stuff, right? I have children and stuff like that, so I've always told my children, you can enjoy everything you want.
I'm gonna put a tree in my house next year, you can come there.
All right, no doubt. As soon as you give me a gift, I open
You
gifts.
have a gift under there now.
Yeah.
Look, listen, I don't mean no stopping. I seen the Christmas tree in the school.
That's what I've been told, yeah.
Oh, I put it here.
Yeah, that's what I know.
There was gifts and all, the tree was
Yeah.
by the window.
You know? Yeah, like I said, listen, it depends on the age of your child, right? Right? First off, as like a person that studies music, loves music, a lot of great albums are Christmas albums, though. You know what I mean? Everything from, you know, aguinaldos, which is a Puerto Rican genre of music. That's all Puerto Rican Christmas music. It's played differently with the cuatro, which is guitar, and it's totally different variations than the typical jibaro music, which is the music of the, what they call ticks out there in the mountains. So it's a variation of that. So it's a totally different music, and it's just Christmas music. So you can't just say, "Oh, I don't like Christmas." So you're not gonna hear music. Like you want to see what it sounds like. Also, that Peanuts album, the Peanuts Christmas album.
Jackson 5.
Well,
Jackson 5 Christmas album.
So
I just want to point out, like when you're dealing with Christmas, like you want to break out of the indoctrination of it.
yeah,
So you're doing it for your
I'm saying
children. If the children something different,
the
but
children, like in my
you won't be indoctrinated into that science of
If you have your household, you can teach them by contrast. So I treat everything as places I'll take them, but not places that I want them to live like.
Right.
So in my home, there's no tree, but we'll watch the cartoons together, and I'll show them like what's this, what's that, and as they get older, I tell them how they made up Santa Claus, how they made up this, how they made up that, so they're not ignorant of Christmas. You know what I'm saying? And then why lie to them though when these people have appropriated
that's
things
fixed.
that are really fun?
Yeah, that's the way.
That are really fun.
Switch it
So
around
then
on them.
what happens is that they
Base.
think that gift giving is made up by Christmas people. They didn't make that up. You know? And then if you don't show them, then you don't show them that those things were added so white folk wouldn't kill themselves. Remember, Christmas was made a children's holiday. First candy, then gifts, then tree, used in such a way where you get gifts at the bottom, was made not just for economy, but was made though so that the focus could be away from the raping and pillage that was the fun stuff that Europeans were doing when they came here. They were celebrating Saturnalia as they knew it, and it was the purge every December. In fact, in America, before like the colonies in those early times, Christmas was banned for a while, right? Because they were like, man, we're not gonna have much of a nation if everybody killed themselves. I mean,
Well, God told me before that Christmas was Nimrod Day, that he was going around chopping heads. And
Well, that's what I want to. Do you recognize Nimrod? Do you?
I don't. I think a lot of those is like everybody putting it together. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was just reading
Yeah.
Elijah Muhammad's English C lesson number 2, right, where he talks about Nimrod. That was actually Alexander the Great, and he was born on December 25th.
Which makes a lot of sense because remember, Alexander the Great is one of the great appropriators. Remember, he conquers Egypt and names it Alexandria. So a lot of the roots of taking people's history, Saturnalia is the rituals that Kemet had that were appropriated, misappropriated because they didn't even know what they were doing, and used differently. So all these have symbolism. The log, the Yule log, all of these things. Yuletide, right? Just to finish that off. Yuletide means season, tide season. Yule means heathen feast, feast of the savage. So all of these things represent ideas of how they were purging. They didn't understand that like the whole rituals at the end of the year or the end of the solar year, and those extra days off the solar year were to commemorate like a regeneration, right? A rejuvenation. And that got appropriated, but really well. But all of the child aspects are added on. That's how they survived it. The ideas of Santa Claus and all these are all things that were written and topped off by a Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol was so big that he was reading that all over the world, in the Western world. and it became a way of really solidifying what we will do as Christmas. What is the Christmas spirit? How do you do that? And then showing that the robber barons that own everything actually will give something. Remember, this Christmas carol's written in a time though where companies or the owners of production are blood-sucking even white people, and they're all dying in factories. So the idea of Scrooge and stuff is massive propaganda. Like if you look at Charles Dickens, you're gonna be like, yo, you're a sellout.
Yeah, I got that book
You
from
wrote like a bloodsucker that was really
Chester,
hyped
that
like that.
he blessed me with that.
And what happens, though?
He gave it to me with
You know what's
Bible's book
interesting?
and a whole bunch of other lessons that went
Scrooge-
in along with 120
The
lessons.
story of Scrooge is that he's rich and then he gives gifts to the poor. But then the tradition
it
ends
was
up being that
quite
you, the
finding
poor
some
man,
of the NOI.
get gifts for everybody. So they
let
even
me see
flipped it
lesson
where
number 2.
you're still buying gifts.
Uh,
You're not the one that's supposed to be
At
getting
some
gifts.
point,
You're supposed to be
I'll
gifted.
share it, at some point.
But they
Please.
retargeted it toward the children. You got to get your kids gifts. You know what I'm saying? But when I deal with my young children, when I deal with my daughter's older already like that, I see it like the Hagakure. If you understand your way, you could look at all ways and be more in accord with your own. You know? So they could go, they could go to grandma's house and grandpa's house and do the tree and all that and see, Jesus, in the barn and all that kind of shit, and all that, and they'll be fine. Because when they ask questions, you're going to give them the actual answer. Because when I was a kid, though, and I said, I used to always go, I like the whole Christmas tree, the cartoons and all that kind of stuff. But then I was always telling you always mess it up with these people on the bottom, though. They're so boring looking. Right? The nativity set is like the wackest part of the tree. Right? I want Santa cartoons, all the cartoons go up, you know what I mean? My favorite cartoon characters in Christmas outfits. And then you got some boring old white people in a barn, you know what I mean? That's whack.
From the Middle East.
Yeah. I didn't even know that because they didn't know where they were from. They didn't know where they were from. They didn't know, right? But the thing is, though, is that it's what you teach your child. And in real life, you have to be able to show your child all cultures, every type of culture. So, like, if you come, you got to treat it like if you're taking your child just to see anything else. Like, if you took her to see something Jewish, you know what I mean? Because one of the things I always tell my daughter, like, if she's 6, she always goes, oh, she tells me something, I go, that's what they do. That's like my line. I say that all the time. That's what they do. Because I always have to tell her, that's what they do. We don't do that. And then now she's old, getting a little older. She goes, that's what they do. We don't do that. We do it like this. You know what I mean? And then now I have to teach her, like, they eat that stuff. Don't make fun of them because they eat that. Or don't go ill in their face because they eat that. You know what I mean? Because she was doing that in the beginning when she first went to school. You know what I mean? Because nobody's eating stuff, That's like the first time she's seen people eating that much, kids eating meat, right? So they gotta know different things, you know what I'm saying? They have to see things, just like as our children get older though, they have to have an awareness of horrible things, you know what I mean? So one of the great ways to prep children to be adults that will see and deal with horrible things is to get them to be slowly prepped for wrong things that are wrong, that have good in them. And also not to learn to compartmentalize, but also see a bigger picture. I don't do this, but there are good parts of this. You know what I mean? I don't do that, but there are good parts of that, And then in the family I grew up with, though, they didn't give a shit about religion like that. So it's not like we did prayer, you did all of that. It was like, when I told my mom I was God, and then that went over well, really great. But then when Christmas comes and seeing like, hey, I'm not doing this, and I did this for you, these are all for you, you know what I mean? I sewed all of these ornaments and did everything, like all these things. And because that's where they put their money in. Like I won't be able to get you anything, but I'll be able to get you something great for Christmas. We'll make one time a year we can make something great. You gotta respect that. A lot of poor people can't do anything really great for their family. But then when it comes Christmas, they could do that one really great thing. I can't get you anything like regular, like you did good in school, I can't get you something right now. But now, because I can thank you for all the great things you did, then let them thank you. You know what I mean? Let them show that affection, right? And then you could explain all these things that are done different and everything like that, Your child is not going to be a Christian when she sings Jingle Bells and shit. And plus, you know that too. Right? And if you're really teaching your children creativity, you can interpolate the songs, right? I've interpolated and changed every single Christmas song that I sing with a kid. On some funny shit, on some knowledge, whatever it is, everything. You know? Like you see her now, she'll sing me the, wrong songs about stuff. You know what I mean? Right? So, just, what was it? Because she's 6. It was just this last Christmas, the God Day Son had tickets for the Rockefeller Christmas, at Radio City Music Hall. I was like, okay, I'll take her. You know what I mean? And she saw most of it. She fell asleep, so she didn't see like the real Jesus shit at the end, Like she didn't see Jesus descend, pop out the nativity. I don't know how to do it, you know what I mean? But she saw a lot of it though, and she enjoyed it and stuff. But she knows that it was different. Like it's not what we do. And when she asks why, I say, because it's not true. That line, when you tell your kids, how come you don't do it? You go, because it's not true. How can I teach you something that's not true?
Right, so now that
That
bonds
impacts
you.
them way more than anything else.
Yeah,
because they see other people say, yo, you doing this because it's fun? But it's not true.
It's not
It'll
true.
mean more later. And then it solidifies that, that's the one person I could go to that doesn't lie to me.
Yeah, see, that was something that disconnected me from my parents and my loved ones when they was telling me about Santa Claus.
Right.
And I was like, okay, when I go outside and some of my friends like that's Santa Claus is not real. And I go back, is it real? And they're like, no, it's really real. Like, and later on when I realized it wasn't real, I was like, I can't talk to them about anything. I can't even.
It does change. You start saying like, you lied to me about something basic.
Yeah.
Because Christmas is, And see, I grew up differently, so my parents were sitting me down saying, listen, there ain't no such thing as Santa Claus, because nobody's getting credit for all the shit I did. That was my mom. Like, I put all this G.I. Joe toy, because G.I. Joe toys, you had to put them together. You gotta assemble them. She was putting them all together and she putting the decals on them and everything. She was like, I'm getting credit for all this stuff. There ain't no Mrs. Claus out there. That's me. She would write Mrs. Claus and write mommy. Like, like she's taking credit for everything. So if you just show your kids the truth, but I think it's fine.
And I think that sets you up to get knowledge yourself, actually.
I think it's fine to show kids all this different culture because they're gonna learn what our culture is better by contrast.
Right.
Instead of just seeing us in a bubble and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but my granddaughter, I tell her, like, in the Christmas time, she was enjoying Christmas, but I tell her, Santa Claus ain't real, and then her mother said, don't teach her that.
A lot of people would do that.
You know what I'm
Don't
saying? Tell her that.
But it's this thing that we treat kids like they're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could be fooled for a while, you know what I mean?
But she's smart. Yeah. That girl is smart. She know a lot.
In the psyche of a Christian, though, they still believe that Jesus Christ can descend at any moment.
No, that's a fact, though.
So
you laugh, but it's
home. My whole earth is like
Santa's coming back. You know what I mean?
like at any day we just gonna be flying up to heaven and shit.
just waiting for the rapture.
Right.
I'd rather mess with Santa because if Jesus comes back, he ain't giving me no gifts. He's about to tell me all the shit I did wrong. If Santa comes back, I was doing as good as I can. I might get a gift. I might get a toy or something like that. You know what I mean? Right? I might get some new headphones or some shit. You know what I mean? Jesus comes back, he's just gonna be telling me, yeah, I know, man. He's out here teaching. I don't know.
Please, what you
Exactly
said
why I
about,
was moving
this is
with
the
no
way
chimneys
we
in
do
the
it.
PJs.
You made me think of God's return home. We go to their memorial, and gods will get up and start building on the gods who they knew for many, many years.
Right.
And then their Christian family is sitting out there.
Ah.
The gods do a beautiful job. I've sat there and marveled at this. They build on the God, and then they tell the parents, this is how we do it. And they're not saying it in a mean way, they're explaining it.
Right.
I even have on tape when Jockey Mathematics returned. It was Jamela who was up there speaking about his experience meeting him and also addressing his family, who some of them seemed to be Christian. He was explaining to them what peace meant and certain aspects of our culture. In terms of that, there's no other said nation that has like what they might call a funeral or a homegoing. We call it a memorial. Nobody does it like the 5% as far as I've seen.
Yeah.
In terms of that type of building. I just want to say peace.
No, I appreciate that, yeah. And you know, like, we're all doing this now, like, we're all learning how to do this.
Right,
And the interaction, and propaganda only becomes more potent,
right.
you know what I'm saying? But, it's all practice, you know what I'm saying? Because some of this stuff could be as hard as teaching a kid good music. But I've taught my kid good music by showing them bad music, right? Because then I show them what they're doing wrong, you know what I mean? Like, for example, I'll give you an example of how people try to shut down things that aren't black or aren't what we do or this and that. Some people, though, won't teach their kids, and like, I'm not taking my kid to see Frozen or nothing like that, because that's white people, things like that, right? But after a while, I was like, yo, why can't she have all the princesses? Because I want to deal with all the human families. So I'm going to get her all the black and brown princesses that there are, but I get her the other ones too, so you collect them all and see the differences and shit, right? So she got really into Frozen, and I'm sick of Let It Go. You know what I'm saying? I'm sick of it, right? I know the whole lyrics. I could karaoke this thing. You know what I mean? And yeah, my daughter will choreograph the entire thing. So the movements, everything. It's yeah. So, but what's interesting, right, is that you go, okay, I'm not going to deal with that, but you deal with it because it's a good art. It's creative. And if they wanted to see it, you check it out, unless it's like really offensive and stuff. But we wanted to see the second one, right? And what's it? Because I'm not ruining it though. If I ruined Frozen 2 for you, grown man, woman, you know. But in Frozen 2, yeah, you got the one with the powers and the other sister. The one with they learned that the powers don't come from their side. In other words, they're like dealing with there's the indigenous and then there's them. What you learn in Frozen 2 is that the mother was indigenous. Because in the movie, you know, they always kill parents in Disney movies. In Disney
wow.
So the parents had died, right? So you don't know them that much. And in the second movie, you learn that the mother was actually indigenous, and that's where Elsa, the one with powers, got her powers from. Because they're indigenous powers of nature, right? A particular one, she could free shit, right? That's one, right? So, and it was always a weird thing that I used to always question, because there's an indigenous chant in the beginning of the Frozen movie, the first one. And I used to always have like this joke and be like, what's up? I used to always say like, yo, why are they doing indigenous chant? What kind of appropriation is this? And they don't really let you know with reasoning of that
Until
the second one. So what I'm trying to say is this. Now when my daughter sees that, it becomes more of a thing. Like, see how the powers, they come from us. And now we watch Frozen, I'm like, see them powers that she had? Those powers come from us. I'm saying this all the time. You know? She don't got those powers from those other people. She got them from our people out there in nature. You know? And what's interesting is that a lot of times, though, you got to teach your kids, though, what's good art, what's offensive stuff. There's certain things I do have to not watch and stuff like that. Like, I can't do Peter Pan, though. You know what I'm saying? And how they make fun of the, you know, they do the indigenous thing where they sing and they make fun of it. There's a song about the Indian that they do. They go, oh, we all got big noses like the Indian, like the, check it out, you know? So I was like, fuck Peter Pan, you know what I mean? Go to hell. But some of them I allow, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta be particular, you know what I mean? So I let her watch with some things, but then I try to let her watch other things that I disagree with, so that way I can disagree with them. Right? Like Little Mermaid. That was this cool for me. Because most of the movies, though, they go into trouble because they disagree with their father. So they can become good teaching points. You know? It's a good thing, right? That's why Little Mermaid, she goes through hell because she don't want to listen to her father, though. Right? She want to go on the surface, start taking, you know, human shit, right? But you want them to see different pieces of culture. And if they're really cultured, they're seeing all of their culture. Black culture, indigenous cultures, all this stuff. And it all converge in a thing where they can see that this is your culture and this is how everybody else does it. This is why we don't do it. You know what I'm saying? And they'll become more well-rounded, and they're going to become more well-rounded if they have a realistic picture, right, of your family. You know what I'm saying? And if you try to change your family so that you can then bring your children there, what happens is that you'll always be in conflict because you're imposing your way on them. So it's always going to be conflict, and your child won't see nothing but the conflict. You know, it'll be the African proverb. You know, the two elephants fighting, and they won't know what's going on. You know, right? So is it that adaptation? You know, it doesn't get nice. It's, to me, especially indigenous people, I find it awkward as hell to celebrate Thanksgiving. It's the most awkward shit ever.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I want to give thanks though, because the first guy killed us, but we're still here. Thank you. I don't know how you do that though. You know, so.
Well, I mean, if you turn it into like a family day, you know, it's a family because
Yeah,
it's a pay for
because
holiday.
family day, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's something different, you know what I'm saying? I find with these holidays or holy days, as the Catholic Church, you know what I'm saying?
Well, some people have more problems with the more religious ones, whereas I find more problems with the immediate historical.
Right. But you
The
got to be
religious
there.
ones is like, look, they believe that somebody came from the sky and he's coming back.
Yeah.
I say it like that though, it sounds stupid.
Mm.
Cause I tell my kids, look, a dead guy, they think a dead guy's coming back to help. You know?
Mm.
I don't sound that, they sound dumb, you know? So then the teaching becomes like, yo, how to respect people that think things that you don't agree with. That's a great lesson for children, because children are usually centric. You know? It's what they do, and everybody else is doing it wrong, you know what I mean? Right? That's why they have their favorites, right? You know, if the kid goes, Spider-Man's the best. You can't tell him shit, you know what I mean? You can't tell him about no Iron Man, you can't tell him about no Hulk, right?
Sure.
So the thing is that they're in their own thing, so that's one of the lessons you try to teach them, you know? And that, again, that's part of the way we learn. One of the big differences about the way we learn and that the way Europeans have been taught to learn is that we're not narrow-minded, we're holistic. So you have to teach your kids holistic, and that means you gotta teach them a lot of different cultures and stuff.
Well, Sean Love, he's a European person, man, but he recognizes our culture. He says, what worked for me with my 5-year-old was sitting down with her and explaining to her that they use Santa Claus and Christmas to get our money. Then I play her toy commercials from the 80s that use Santa. I asked her to look at each commercial and identify what they're using Christmas and Santa to try to sell us.
That's a great way, because that's how I do with the with food. We go to the supermarket. All of the food with cartoons is terrible for you. So I already with both my daughters, the one that's already grown and the young one, I always tell them, listen, remember, all the bad foods, they put cartoons on them so people can eat them.
Mm.
So the bad foods still got all the good cartoons on them because nobody wants to eat them. So she already knows them. And then now she'll look though, and she goes, this has bad stuff on it, you know? Other people will look stupid, like they're like, oh, okay. I don't care what other people think.
Mm.
She's telling the truth, you know what I mean? But, because kids' foods are the worst though, by the way. The worst foods are targeted toward children.
Yeah, babies are great, but
Go eat
they're
a
targeted.
Lunchables diet for work. Make Lunchables your meal for lunch. Monday through Friday though, you'll be dead. You'll die. They figured out how to keep food packaged for years. You know, cheeses and I don't even know how they get the fruit in there.
Goldfish. It's horrible.
It's gross.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But there's good books on that and all that kind of stuff. Sugar so fat, you know, all that kind of. There's a lot of great food books about processed food and all that. But I digress. You know. But the thing is though, is that you
Those
gotta.
kids, you talk about those kids' Lunchables, right?
Yeah, kids Lunchables. Yeah. Never eat things with good cartoons. The cartoon's better, the less food is. Got Spider-Man in it? No. You web sling back that to the shelf. You know what I mean? You don't want to eat it though. You know? But yeah. But yeah, it's always different. It's always different. As long as you become adaptable. You know what I'm saying? Right? You're not. Also, you can't be scared. You're not going to become a Christian though if you listen to a Christmas song. It doesn't work that way. You know. You could like Nat King Cole's Christmas song. He sings it perfectly. What are you gonna do? Right?
You gotta
Planet
let
Asia.
Yeah.
Christmas song.
It's the greatest Christmas song of all time.
Yeah.
Along with Razcats, he made Christmas. Those are a little bit different though. But yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I forgot about that. But I have a lot of Christmas music. You know? Yeah, I mean, Puerto Ricans, they got songs about pig. Literally. Gran Combo will be singing about lechon.
Oh yeah.
That's a song. It's called lechon. Like,
Lechon.
they literally sing about how great the pig is during the holiday. That's gross. But this sounds great, though. You know? We all 85 in different ways. You know what I'm saying?
Now, I wonder sometimes why is it that Puerto Rican culture be so heavy on portion and Dominican really ain't? How did that, you know what I'm saying, that not transfer over? How did that transfer?
You know what? I don't know. That's like a poor thesis question. You know what I mean? A big thesis question. You know, I don't know. I know that when I've been to Puerto Rico, there's literally a whole pig on a stick everywhere you go. So it becomes probably like it's the most grossest shit ever.
I mean, there's definitely Dominicans, so-called Dominicans that eat pork, you know what I'm saying? But like,
I will say this though. You gotta look at American colonization. Because American colonization makes everything more, accelerates the conditioning, brainwashing, and also accelerates the processing of a nation. So when we look at like the islands, all the islands, PRs, we're gonna see the most processed foods and everything because they have American access the most. You know what I mean? So they're the most Americanized. So you're gonna see processed foods and stuff like that. You know what I
It's
mean?
a commonwealth state.
Yeah, yeah. And what is a commonwealth? You know, it literally is the definition. Just I'll show you the blood sucking. The definition you learn in school because they had to teach us because we was all Puerto Rican in class. We're a commonwealth because it is free. It is called a free associated state. You know what I mean?
how you free and
How you free, associated, and also state. You're not a state. You're associated by colonization, and you're not really free. So, but that's what they call it. You look it up, and that's what they call it. You know what I mean? Right? It's like you're a virgin hooker. Virgin prostitute. It's magical term, oxymoronic term, right?
it's the mountains.
Yeah, the epitome, and that changes everything. Because remember, what I mean by colonization is that the Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico was taught they were taught Americanized. So they were taught food groups changing. So they were taught apples and oranges and things like that they never even saw. Like they were being indoctrinated, even if they didn't even know what they were learning. You know what I mean? And so that impacts the way the island transitions. It's not a smooth transition at all. It's pretty violent. And pretty quick, right? One of the greatest devils of all time, General Nelson A. Miles, who did everything devilish. Like as a general, he helped violently squash countless strikes and, all kinds of stuff in the Americas for companies. He also was there when they first landed into Puerto Rico as the force from America. And he said, I forget the exact quote, finally, we are here to bring you the fruits of civilization. What an asshole. You know what I mean? This is what he said when representing the U.S. as a general, he landed in Puerto Rico. 1898. I remember the date. That was one of the things that radicalized me when I was reading that. July 25th, 1898. Son of a bitch said that. So like, these are the things that they gave, so it's gonna be totally different, I always say that it comes along with that. And Puerto Ricans lost a lot of things. They lost a lot. Just like a lot of Americans don't know how to cook. Any of their cultural foods or anything like that. You know what I mean? Because they lose it. They lose it with processing and stuff like that. And mind you, it's a processing that happens over a very short period of time. Very short. You could say like in the last 50 years. Right? That's rapid. It's very rapid.
The sister asks, she's saying that dealing with her family, it has drawn a wedge between them. It's because they're afraid to speak to her because they don't want to hear what they call all that knowledge stuff. The advice on that. I mean, I would say we just come in a better current.
For a long time with me. And sometimes it was the way I was speaking. Sometimes it's that they weren't speaking to me. So it's also, look, what helps me sometimes is that I know things that I want to know, but aren't necessary. So like, when I got knowledge though for like the whole decade, like the 2000s, I didn't watch any sports. I didn't do anything. I just studied this knowledge, just studied music, nothing else. And one of the ways that I keep more in tune with my family is by watching more sports and following movies and film and TV more. You know what I mean? So I'm not watching TV all day though, but I watch a little bit. I follow the best things. So I try to follow, and that means a lot in my family because they all watch TV. Like when I got knowledge itself, it's like 5 family members and 4 TVs. I was the one without a TV. I just played music. That's all I cared about. So I was always like that, ostracized. But I became more adaptive. I was like, yo, go back. I watch some sports. I follow the Mets. Things like that. For a whole decade, I didn't watch nothing. Like 2000s Mets, I got no idea. After I took my kid to see Jose Reyes for a little bit, I lost track with the whole thing.
Well, I think the peace, the sister here, she just elaborated a little bit more. She says, I got knowledge of self after my kids were grown and raised them American and Christian. Now when I try to share the knowledge, they look at me like I'm a hypocrite who's been brainwashed.
Wow.
Yeah.
No.
That's kind of.
How old is the cheese?
I'm not sure. I don't know how old, but she said she's
here's
grown now.
Here's the thing, right? You have to start at the level that they're at, even if they're older.
Right.
Like what they can relate to. So if they come from a particular culture, you want to remember look, I'm telling you a lot of this today's class comes off like what you're missing. We can't go back ancient history if we don't know this immediate history. And if your immediate history is Puerto Rico, you gotta step back into that island before you step back into a pyramid. You know what I'm saying? You gotta know the whole path. You know what I mean? So the thing is this, she has to be able to recreate her path of how she got this knowledge. But then she also has to find out what was the path that they know now. Like what do they know? And what do they see? How do they see things?
How can you relate with
So that they can
Right. You gotta make it relatable.
Yeah.
look, when you do journalism and stuff like that, right? It kind of sucks, especially like if you do what I'm doing. You want to just talk about the quality of a music, but people don't read about quality. Like you just say, hey, this is an article about quality music. Like that's the title for all of them, right? Quality music article. You have to have a story. What is the story that you pin? What is the angle? People want an angle. For your family, they want to know, like, after all these years, what is the story that gets you, that makes all this information that some of it could be true or not, but why is it so important that we have to change things that we're doing now? Because the thing is, though, she's having trouble because she actually was efficient in raising them. In other words, they are self-sufficient. Let's say if she raised her children, right, and they were totally useless, right? And it's like, I raised these kids and they just became junkies and shit and they're useless. She probably could go back in the street and be like, listen, I taught you all the wrong things, man. Come back with me, I'll rehabilitate you and all that kind of stuff. But she actually taught them right. They're civilized. They're out there living a life, intelligent enough to make their own decisions and sustain themselves. So now, why is it important that they go back and actually look at some of the things that they were learning and then even question how they would raise their children, which would be her grandchildren? That's the story you need to tell. If you don't have that answer, then you can't give them the information. The information is not what they need first. They need the story. They need the story of why going back was so important and getting it correct. You see? You see, the thing is, though, is that if all of us are oppressed, it means that we can function without knowing anything. That's an actual proof. We can actually function in a society without knowing things. Some of us can function even greatly, right? I'm sure there were like millionaires and stuff, really successful people in their fields that have no idea about this knowledge and stuff. Or heard about it cursory and didn't care. So now you have to see, like, what is the worth of this story? What could be added on? Because what they do deserve is to see the benefit of even learning this. Because remember, we teach people what? Civilization, righteousness, and the knowledge of themselves. So that means that you don't teach them knowledge of self when you go at them. You might think that they're ready because they're your children. They're adults. They're your grown adult children. You got to teach them civilization first. You have to show them that everything you taught them to live in was not quite exactly what I thrust you into. There's more to it. And that's what they're having problems with. It's not necessarily the knowledge first. It's the civilization first. The appearance that, what's wrong with the society that you put us into that we're, enabled in and we're functioning in? Then after that, then you can get into righteousness. In other words, man, you just ruined my whole life now. I gotta eat different, I gotta do different. What should I do? In other words, that person's not gonna be on their own. They should come back to you all the time. They go, what do I do, man? You just ruined my life here. Or, I'm doing this, I don't know what to do. Righteousness, steps to follow, a manner, a way. It is at this level, especially if the so-called civilization is corrupt, that they start to build a religion. So that way people can continue to follow a way that is unquestionable, right? With the most unquestionable question, right? The glass ceiling, right? I won't question anything about who is God or anything like that. If you don't question who God is and you bear witness that it's a mystery, every other question, nearly every other question, you won't get up to. Because he's going to do the rest. That man up there is going to do it. I did all I could. Just do the rest. Right? So, once you get past righteousness, you're giving them things, and then like, yo, okay, I could do this on my own. And now you teach them like, yo, this is the knowledge. You're the true and living. You always have the capacity to do this. This is who you are. See, we don't see it that way because remember, when we teach the knowledge, we're teaching youth. So we could skip a lot. Why? Because they have a suspension of belief. They don't believe anything. In fact, they don't believe your ass. Right? They don't appreciate you. They don't believe shit. That's why they're the best student. The best student doesn't give a fuck who you are, what you think, or anything. So like, yo, you don't believe any of this shit? Let me show you something, and you can go check it for yourself. And you come back and tell me I was right and exactly. Right? Anybody that's in their teens and stuff, I never tell them like, this is it, this is that. I tell them, yo, check this out. You go back and check it yourself. So, if they're already grown, you have to tell them your story because they might not be so inclined to go back and check it. They probably don't have a suspension of belief in things, right? So they have to know your story. The real thing is that they have to believe your story first. Why is it important for you, and how are you not in some cult? You know what I mean?
I think a lot of people get caught up on the God concept, and then you breaking into them that no, there's no mystery God in the sky. But then sometimes, like even with me, I find it hard to explain fully how
That's why
it's not a mystery, but it's this. You know what I'm saying?
That's why I had that assignment for you, right? And
Right.
I told you, I'll just tell you what
How to deal with
assignment.
any problem.
I told them, show and prove, like say to someone what you would say to someone, what our culture is without using any of the words in Supreme Math. You can't even use culture, you know? There are ways to get around that, but I'm saying the exercise of it. You know why I say that though is because what we learn though, we also have it so fragmented into a dialect that we could get trapped in making a tradition of our own truth. And then we could be robotic. There's a thing that Judah Krishnamurti said.
Oh, that happens. Yeah.
He said that if something is true, it becomes a belief even for you if it's true, if you're never questioning it. You see? So if you're still not questioning, like, so why is there, you said black man is God, you say, okay, that's true, absolute. Now we move on to something else. Then now that's a consistent belief that you have. Because now you don't go back and check it, you don't see what else you could find, you're not analyzing it more, you left it as it is. But if you're that true and living God, you just put something on the back burner that's a living statement. It's a living statement. It's not supposed to end.
Right.
You're never supposed to finish researching you, right? But going back to that, like, it's the story. You know, to teach anyone, you have to know what they need, what they want to learn. You see? And in this case, instead of trying to teach them, they're grown already. She should just be trying to share her story and the validity of what she learned. You see? Slowly but surely, though, everyone does your lifestyle if you show and prove it to be right and exact. You know what I mean? I didn't tell nobody, like, it certainly didn't go into my family and go, listen, nah, there's no pork around here. Fuck all that. We ain't doing none of that shit here. I didn't do any of that, though. That wouldn't work. No. I said, listen, I'm not doing any of that, though.
That shit went wrong.
So I just started a long time.
Right?
Let's get extra plates of, unhealthy vegan food. Like giant plates, sarcastic plates of white rice.
That's funny because my physical recently said, stop eating that plant-based food. So why? Because read the ingredients. No, that's not how I eat though. Like I don't go buy plant-based, box food. Like I eat actual plants. Like,
Yeah, that's one of the misnomers now. People would go, it's plant-based though, but you could make the worst chemicals out of plant-based. You know what I mean? Like it's how the chemicals combine. You know what I mean? You can make something very artificial out of two natural chemicals. You know what I mean? But I don't know if that helps though. But it's the perspective. Like,
no, she actually appreciated that. She said,
Yeah,
"I appreciate it."
you're a parent of adults. You know, like my oldest is 18. I don't treat her like a kid though. But I learned that because I wasn't her custodial parent. Like I wasn't there all the time. So I had to go for quality versus quantity. So I let the other mother teach a whole bunch of shit the wrong way for a long time. So I made sure that I had that little amount, just 5 minutes of teaching her the right thing and having a lifestyle of proofs. You see?
And it worked, didn't it?
Yeah, it's a lifestyle of proofs.
It works.
You know, if they go, look, that's the right food. And I said, does she look like she's eating the right food? How's that look for her? You know what I mean? People start getting ragged. I'm not ragged.
Yeah. That's my example with my son and going to.
All these things fit together though. I have energy. I'm not this. All right, all of that. It goes into all things, right? When they need an answer for something,
She said her baby's
I
20 and 24.
read those things. I can relate to her things, right? And also, she also has to find out though what's the actual culture. You know, like you have adult children. What is their culture? And I don't mean like Christian or whatever like that. What is their daily life? In other words, how do they make decisions about things? If they deal with a mystery God, at what point do they put God into the mix? Right? Because some people might put God into the mix immediately though. You know? Like the bus came on time. They just started the day and like, oh, praise Jesus. Like there's people like that. Right? Then there's other people, it's really hard times to get to Jesus though. But some people praise Jesus for everything though. Everything though. You know, boss says, you can leave 5 minutes early. Oh, praise Jesus. I'm like,
all the time.
overdose a little bit with this Jesus thing. You know what I'm saying? But you gotta see, like, we always teach people according to what they need. And the truth is that you made capable adults. So a lot of the stuff that you might be teaching them may be true, but they may not need it. You know what I mean? And it absolutely would be an inconvenience. If you shatter the civilization, the lenses of civilization of people, then you've actually shattered the ways that they conduct themselves by. You know? That's why you don't bring revolution to adults. That's why you don't really have success bringing knowledge of self to adults. Right? Who are the only adults in history that got knowledge of, like, meaning man is God? It's everybody that goes into gets to the 35th chamber. You know? In the real movie, he gets to the 35th chamber. Who's in the 35th chamber? Hitting the gong bells and all that. And then pushing Sante, right? And pushing him with the cheat. Man, they was all old guys. So they had to wait their whole life to master all this. And then they was like, oh, And Confucius, right? When did he start teaching? As an elderly man. So the culture of the East, where you could find teachings that said man is God, they teach this at a very old age. You had to really be of it, be disciplined of it. Mm-hmm. The father is the only thing I found in history where he was like, yo, that kid's gonna get it, because everybody else is tampered. He dealt with the purity of things, and not the development of a person. He dealt with the purity of a person. So he went to the children.
Like a common 85 response would be like, oh, we could come from God, but we not God, or you know what I'm saying? So it's like, what's a good response to that when you trying to explain this culture?
It's made in the image of. So you say it made in the image of.
They could say all that shit and they still don't get it. You know what I mean?
Well, then you got to start with where they at. You can't force it down there.
Nah, I know that, but I'm thinking in regards to like older 85 adults and even kids. You know what I'm saying? I got a daughter, so one day she gonna be like, yo.
Are they Christian?
Some Christians, some just don't have no actual.
Because some Christians think that God's within themselves. So I hit them with that. I'm like, God's within
right.
you.
It's a bunch of scriptures in the Bible that correlate to that, but they still be like, well,
Well, that's a pen
I
that they
have
have.
kids, but my kids ain't me, and I'm like, actually, they are in a sense. You know what I mean? So it's like it's the same thing, but some people still don't want to accept it for that. They rather believe.
And
that
you gotta
it's
be
a-
careful.
it's
You
a
gotta
physical being in the sky somewhere.
you gotta be
controlling
careful
shit for them.
or arguing with older folks.
Right.
Because a lot of times those older folks, like they just set in their ways, you know what I'm saying? And they have those pens and they are comfortable with those pens. Like you seek out the babies, you know what I'm saying, and you teach them because they're gonna be the ones that say, oh, okay, and then they're gonna question you, and that's when you have the opportunity to show and prove.
Yeah.
Whereas the older folks, you know, you just gotta live by example and let it be, you know what I'm saying, and then use that as something that you use to like your relationship with them. You show with the kids, like this is how you're gonna relate, and this is what you up against. Because my son's mother put him in Catholic school. You know what I'm saying, and I was like, well, okay, well, this is what we're gonna deal with. This is what we have to deal with. So. This is what they teaching you. This is what I'm teaching you. Now compare the two. And now he's like, oh, peace, God. You know what I'm saying? I see what you're saying. Like, I mean, he about to be 20 now, but he went through that period where he was, you know, being indoctrinated by his old earth, you know, and just like Sunez said, like, look at the dietary law. Like, his mom's is younger than me, 2-3 years younger than me, but she looks older than me because of her dietary, the way she carried her diet. And my dietary is way different. He said, "Oh yeah, you keep yourself way more preserved than that." See what I'm saying? So you know he can see it because he's smart. You know, kids are smart, so you gotta recognize that that they smart, like and show them the examples of that. You know. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna email it to you. Text me if I don't get it to you tomorrow. That way I can get to you in the morning. I can't believe I thought I did that. You should have harassed me.
I'm just saying with the 1 to 36, like reviewing it.
Okay. No, that's peace, God. But yeah, I'll email you that. Get to the next level. Does anybody have any questions? Like we're nearing the end here.
Yeah, she was saying that peace. Her son thinks the 10 Commandments, the law of the land, and her daughter is a crisis God seeker. You know, I mean, I see. I mean, being that they're older, I would just suggest that you just take it from there, like and show how does the 10 Commandments relate to you're living now, and what is she seeking out, and just you got to have patience with people. That's important.
The truth is, no matter what she says, though, they're adults already.
Yeah, they're adults, right? And I was just saying this to the God, like don't argue, waste your time arguing with older people. You know what I'm saying? Like she may have grandkids, like they may be the ones, that you get the second chance with. Like you get what I'm saying? Like but you gotta be careful because now you're dealing with someone else's children. You know what I'm saying? So, it's all of how you relate with people. It's a delicate thing,
I give the kids prizes when they.
Well, look, one mistake that I see in what she's saying and what you just said, right? You're trying to find a way to convince people of the truth.
Right.
I haven't done that yet. I haven't done this shit yet. Okay? What I care about was when I talk with somebody, though, that what I said is exactly understood. And then that's why I say, when someone new comes to my class, though, what I tell them, and explain exactly how you got to the seat, what you walked into. So at the end of this class, though, you can make a decision of, you ever want to come here again? And if Sunez is crazy or something like that, you can say, it's crazy, I'm never coming back. Right? So to be able to explain yourself and your vantage point perfectly is really the point. Not so that they wouldn't get it. Because remember, a lot of this stuff seems simple to explain, though. But it's something that has to fester in someone long enough. It's not something that can impact immediately. So you'd be trying to do something that is wasteful anyway. You can't teach anybody on contact first time anyway. You have to slowly get it to them. You know what I mean? Because remember, it's not simple. Black man is God. There's no mystery God. There's science to show this, that, and we have all. What's being left out is the fact that they have had a whole decision-making process in their whole life, that certain decisions are not up to them, and certain things are not in their purview of creation.
And decisions not based on,
it's
not based on knowledge.
Life that has gone by with that decision that way.
It's not based on knowledge. It's based on their feeling of what it may be.
Yeah, and it's also something where you're taught that this is a field where knowledge is illegitimate. Okay? So you wouldn't be, no one, trust me, if they acted like they did, they didn't. If you taught somebody the first time though, and they said, yeah, I got it, I'm God, boom, boom, they just being slick. They're being slick. They heard that on records and everything like that, and now you're supplementing their stuff. No one gets it on first impact. You know what I mean?
Well, no, at least not adults.
Yeah, you know what I
At
mean?
least not,
Yeah,
adults.
and even anyone like a child, they still would need to hear more of it. You know what I mean? They still would need more of it though. So it's
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 a
heavy.
it's a guidance, like
Yeah, it's a heavy simplicity. So
heavy simplicity.
yeah, that's AKA the layers.
The
When,
layers.
when I
Right,
did, when
yeah.
I had a similar problem like that, but when they see me fasting and I did those 3 days, they were like, I started getting more respect. You know what I'm saying? Because they was, they were seeing.
Listen, I've been around 85, so that I just do what I'm doing, and I'm content if they just call me Angel. If that's how they describe me, you know what I'm saying? Because then, that perspective, they're not gonna get that. Because people are not used to being someone that expects themselves to be right and exact, and if they're wrong, when they are wrong, they work to create it. They work to fix it. They work to correct it. That kind of nature is something that religion allows us to say, well, we are okay, we're born in sin, so certain error is allowable. And we wouldn't be able to hold the weight of being in a position to correct our errors, which is actually the opposite, right? To have the humility to continue to correct your errors, though, is the nature, right? But, yeah. Also, too, I wouldn't worry too much about it, though.
Yeah.
Even your children, like, even if your children are not living right and exact, you know what I mean?
Well, I think here, somebody just pointed out, like, maybe it's a subconscious desire for a type of relationship you want with your seeds,
course.
that there's a bigger block. So, and that's where you gotta like learn, like, you gotta not worry about just being right, just more like just bear with them and just being and connecting with them, because this situation is not about knowledge, it's about how they grew up and how they see things, and you wanna connect with them and start to pull out the pen safely.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
But
saying?
what? That's an extreme case, right? Right? In our case, because we're all 5%. But the truth is, all of us, we're always, if we were actually correct, and the babies are the greatest, our children are supposed to show us something that we did wrong that they got right. If not, then we failed. So they're supposed to show us things that we don't understand, that we're not ready for. That's actual fact. You know what I mean? That's why with certain things, like even children, as they grow up, if they like things that you don't like, or they like things that's completely whack, you know what I'm saying? You still have to listen to them.
Yeah.
So I spend more time trying to get reasons out of people, right? Than trying to make them agree with something, right? So like I've taken my kid, the oldest one, to all types of concerts. I was like, this is really horrible. You know what I mean? And then I've taken her to someone that I liked. But every time we went, she always had to explain to me why she liked that music. Or why she liked this certain book. You know what I mean? Why I should look at this book or whatever like that. They had to give me reasons though. So they had to learn how to articulate. And even if they don't live your way of life, they still live a way of life that is based on how we do it. In other words, we articulate, we put into words why we do certain things. It's not random. They're reasons. So everything. You can start this at a young age though. Even if they can't answer it though, you could bother them and pester them about stuff. You know? Why do you like this? Why do you like that? You know, but why? You know?
Right. So in this case, like it'd be best for her to connect with them, and then you could actually reason with them, like, and see what they
She
say.
wants to know about our way of life. How many things about their way of life does she know?
Right.
Like in detail about whatever church or whatever thing that they go to. Because I'm sure that's how they're countering in their head, though, right? Because every Christian thinks that their church is the bomb and nothing else is equivalent. So
Right.
that they're special. They got the special Jesus, link.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Like my sister's like, because she's now a reverend, and she said, "Oh, come out to my church, if like I'll come support you, but you ain't converting me to that shit." You know what I'm saying? I'll support you and bear with you, but
And the truth is that when you try to understand your family, you probably learn more about stuff.
Right.
If you're if you're comfortable with being around their way of life, then you would ever learn. You know? You go to the church now with them and be like nice with your family, you're gonna learn a lot about the church you didn't even see before. You know, and you're like, oh, that's what they do? Okay. Because when I was a kid, I was ignoring the whole shit.
Right.
You know?
So it's a different experience if
Yeah,
you go
I
now.
was just trying to keep awake. That was the battle. It was just staying awake. So I really don't have a church history. Like, you know? Stay awake or look like you're awake.
With your eyes open and sleep. Like,
Yeah, like half like this, or you know, spend moments looking down and like you know you're reading, trying to read the Bible like that. Get a couple of winks like that, reading it. But yeah, you know. But anything that's the truth, anything that's a lie, anything that is done consistently can become a tradition. Anything that becomes a tradition can become a religion.
yeah.
Even what we do. So you always got to make sure that what you're doing is questioned. You know? And in that somber note, anybody have anything?
Do you see a difference in the equality years in terms of the youth getting the teaching quicker, just based on the climate that was going on? I'm just thinking.
It's different. The student is different.
Okay.
The student, let's say in my years teaching, I've been teaching since 2000. The students that I teach are, they don't have an energy that has to be funneled. They have an energy that has to be sparked. It's a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah.
The students in the 60s, they had this wild energy that had to be funneled and directed the right way. The students that I'm teaching a lot of times, they know that things are wrong though, but then also not very inspired. You know what I mean? And that's because they live more of a sheltered life. They live more of an internet life. Everything is inside.
Yeah,
So
you
it's a
know.
little bit different. You know what I mean? And I understand it because I'm kind of in the middle like that. You know, because I didn't grow up in this era like that. We grew up outside. But all of the gifts that I've developed though, I was inside a lot. That's what I read, you know. I read, so I was inside a lot. And I have a twin brother. So I didn't have to go look for a friend. So that takes away a lot of trust me, it takes away a lot of the life though. You don't have to worry about having a friend because you always got one. So I didn't have to go look for a friend. So that helped a lot of situations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's deep what you just said there.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I didn't make friends at a certain place, though, I was like, fuck it, I got one. I got one, so, you know, we were good. So I didn't really try that hard to make friends, you know? I let it come, you know?
I want to say that every generation, every different time period has its own different challenge. You know, like in the 60s, you know, it you know, they had their challenges, and you know, and I was building seniors about this, you know, like look at the 70s, and you know, brothers from the 60s look at brothers from the 70s like, oh, y'all got it soft, y'all ain't get it like this. And then brothers from the 70s look at brothers from the 80s like, yo, y'all, what y'all doing? Y'all got fucking up, you know. And then brothers from the 80s look at brothers from the 90s like, y'all music cats, and brothers from the 90s look at brothers from the 2000s like, y'all are internet cats. And it's always something. Every generation
is different.
Right, and there's different challenges for every generation. You know what I'm saying? There's different, you know, different time periods. So, you know, it is different. You know, it just, you know, it's a different time period, different atmosphere, different climate.
The oddity that most people should see is that today's student has everything at their fingertips, though, and they don't tip their fingers. You know? Mostly all of the information I had to either go find, rob, steal, take. Like I broke pages out of library books. I took everything. I have books that I never gave back from all different type of libraries.
Right. You see,
All that kind of stuff.
You see-
Music. That's how I started my collection. I just kept stuff. I didn't give it back. You know what I mean?
You see when you
I was
gave me
obsessed
your
with information.
You see when you gave me the information
Yeah.
with the books and you put your email address, I said, I don't know why he giving me his email address because I don't use the internet for nothing. That's why I always ask you, where can I find these books?
But
You know
see,
what I'm saying?
that's the
I like
thing,
to,
right?
like, you
That's the
know.
thing. We're impaired if we're not doing that.
Uh-huh.
right? So I don't want the old man excuse, so I want you to,
Yeah, no,
I want you to get into your midlife crisis and get on the internet where you're more.
But Sun God, you know, but you said, when I met you, you said that you saw me, because you recognize me from this. So you're on the internet in some capacity.
Yeah, no, I'm saying on YouTube, yeah, but like me, like going to Gmail,
Checking
like,
emails
all that,
constantly.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
man,
nah.
you got-
I prefer to go to a library and
Okay,
get
let
the
me tell you
book.
something.
Know what
I
I'm
always
saying?
say this though.
Right, hard copy.
Alright, look, I publish books, articles, directly to website, all of that, right? In my phone, I can do that right now. In my phone, I have access to about 1,000 books. Without internet, there's at least 50 books in this phone I can start reading and researching right now. I have access to all the music I have. I have access to documents because you have Google Docs if you went on YouTube. I could write anything and have free domain to write whatever. In other words, there's no space limit. Okay? So if you ask me about something that I wrote or something like that, or something I said, I could go in there and do a search for where it was said and stuff, and I'll find it. In fact, I could go back now and say the first time that I met you in the class and what you were doing. Because I wrote that in there. Right? Every single class. Not you, though. I know you even before I was digital, I was teaching. Right? But the thing, what I'm saying is, though, is that all that archaic stuff, I like the smell of a book. It's all bullshit. A book can be destroyed just as fast as somebody's internet browser. It's all a paperback book only lasts like 4 years. A library is replacing it after 3. Okay? So don't think about like, books last forever and shit. Books last forever because you ain't reading the shit. You know? You also lose the classroom resources that I've developed here. Because this classroom, if you email me, if I show you how to use the apps and all that stuff that you can put on your phone, you have access to over 1,000 books. Because I make sure I jack the whole library that I could give away free. So thousands of books, all of the plus lessons I've written, 120, all of that, everything you have at your fingertips, though. You know what I mean? So we have to get digital because there's so much that we could do with it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, the student is though, but they're doing it for play only. They don't realize what they could do with all the materials that they have.
Yeah.
You know? But all I use, my phone is a computer though. It's got no game apps, none of that shit. It's got music, writing, books. That's it. If it ain't one of those things, it ain't in there. It's not in there. You know? And it starts with the Gmail, you know? Gotta use all that shit. Gotta use all that shit. Remember, if you write a long enough document in Google Docs, it'll allow you to print it or save it as a Word document. That Word document could be transported into Amazon Kindle. Through Amazon Kindle, you can make your own book. I just said something that takes zero money to do. Okay? So now when people buy a book off me, I get a lot of profit. I didn't pay shit like before to make a book. Right? You're really losing all the access to things that you could do. You know what I mean?
You mean like write your own book and then have people like support it, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You could do all that.
Appreciate that.
I didn't get like a book program or nothing like that. I had those. Those weren't as useful as these. Not even. Transferring it to EPUB, all that. I worked on all of those all these years. Nowadays you can monetize everything you're doing. You know what I mean? But you have access to stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you have access to catalog all your thoughts with free space. And you can't beat that. Cannot beat that. You know what I mean? You cannot beat that. That's why I said everybody has stuff at their fingertips. If I told you to be more cultured, listen to this lecture, or the documentary I said, when Moors ruled Europe, that's on YouTube. If I told you to listen to an album, I think everybody should hear certain albums, right? Everybody should hear Kinda Blue. Everybody should hear certain... You go online and listen to that. Right? I had to scrounge up the money and buy it though. Else I wasn't hearing it though. Right? Because where I was from, though, right? Listen to no jazz.
Yeah.
Right?
I know what you mean.
So with that said, don't be, I want you to be aged. I don't want you to be old. Okay?
Now, when you speak about, like, write a journal about you know, you inspired me to write, you know what I'm saying? Cause you said that's a way to get sharp. But then I've been thinking, yeah, I wanna write, but my life haven't been like a journal about my life, what you mean?
Yo,
Your journal should have
yeah.
your life. Your journal should have the things you think, the opinions and commentary about the things you read. Most of my journal are the things I read. That's why I remember everything.
You know what's interesting, Sunez, is because, and I think I can relate to the brother, a lot of times when we look at our daily lives, we don't really see how historical or the significance of what's happening right then and there. Just even you playing with your babies, you know what I'm saying? Something that you might have said to your baby that you thought was funny, but then went out your head and you was like, oh yeah, well that happened last week. And then you don't really think about it. But if you wrote it down, then you back at it like 10, 20 years later, you're like, yo, that's history. Right.
What's worthwhile?
That's history. Like for instance, my son's name is Justice. You know what I'm saying? And I would sing this song to him when he was a baby, Justice, and now he remembers it. Like that's something that that's in my mind. But that's something I could have wrote down. Like how when I came up with that, how did I come up with that? Like you know what I'm saying? I'm singing to him when he was a baby. You know what I'm saying? This is how he was able to, before he turned 1, was able to spell his own name.
See,
my
two kids are
just sing to
a lot
him.
of years apart. So one is 18, one is 6. I remembered everything I did with my older one because I wrote it all down.
Wow.
So I don't forget it. You know what I'm saying?
That's unique.
I didn't forget anything.
Yeah,
So like,
because I wanted to start.
here's
right?
the thing though. You're going outside saying that you're the true and living God, but now your life is not worthy.
No, because I got a lot of stuff in my life that
It's not so much
you
what,
know that
it's not
that's
so much what
much
you
positive.
actually lived. It's your commentary on that life.
Okay.
It's the insights of your life that are important. Okay? You gotta understand though. Why is
English.
life seem so good in
Keep
ancient
going,
Kemet or ancient times, but then you live at this time.
Keep it simple.
And life sucks for you.
Peace.
And you're the true and living God. You're the only person that could survive in this day and time. If we took Imhotep here, he would die of a cold.
Since Sunya's got more journals than the libraries of Timbuktu. that's
my goal. That's my goal.
That's
What I'm
infinite.
saying though is that the people of ancient times wouldn't survive now, just like you wouldn't really survive then. You were built for this day and time. Sometimes when you write it out, you speak it out. And plus, look, these are tools that you need. Let me tell you something, right? People always go like, how did I get so much into writing? Part of it was my mother forcing me. But another part though was with this one moment, because everything is only worthy of being cool if your father does it. My father only read the newspaper. So that didn't seem like a book to me. That didn't seem like reading. But one time he was reading the Civil War book that was huge. And he was a really slow reader, and it took him over 2 years to read the shit. But he finally finished the shit. I gained so much respect for him going through that boring ass book just to read that every time I read a book and I don't like it, I think about that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if he got through that dumbass Civil War book, I could get through whatever I'm reading now. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, some of these experiences though, you have to have commentary to experiences. And they're gonna be worthy to your children. You know what I mean? If you don't
All right,
start now,
I think that's for you. I don't know if
even
that's
if
for
you don't do
everybody
that
else,
much,
but peace to you.
your children will see
Peace.
that. Other people will see that you value your life enough that you have thoughts and ideas that your life is sparked. Well, Paramahansa Yogananda said in his scientific affirmations that for every page that you read, you should be able to write 3 pages worth about it. So I was reading that, and I was like, damn, I wrote a lot, but I ain't writing that much yet. You know what I mean? But the thing was, the real point that he was saying was everything that you're experiencing should be bringing up insights to you, questions. So what I'm saying is that I'm not asking you just today I woke up and brushed my teeth. Come on, nobody wants to read that. So you know you don't want to write that. You could write it, look, everything is going normally. But start out saying how you see the day's mathematics. Because no matter what though, if your day is the same every day, the mathematics isn't. So you're leaving the house with a different perspective. Now, how is that perspective being applied? You will see at the end of the day, if you write at the end of the day. If you wrote at the beginning of the day, you see what the hell am I going to do with this insight? You see? Because writing your own history in advance means that you have to first be great at seeing what happened. Then you can see what you're gonna do. See? All the people that are successful in what they do, if you really look at it, they have a massive amount of information about what already happened. Everything from the greatest ball players to the greatest musician, they have a catalog of information of everything that was done before. There's no great MC that is going, whoops, I just thought I came through the door, I said it before, and I didn't know something. Nobody would know. It's not happening. All the great ones knew that was said already. Because they have a wealth of knowledge. So they're already planning things. They already have a catalog. All I'm saying is get in the practice of putting some of that down. You know what I mean? And if you don't want it to be about your life, then every day write about every single book that you read. Then what you're gonna realize is that I'm not really learning that many things. I'm not reading that much. Or I'm just watching things that are not worthwhile. You know? So when you look at that, then you start questioning, damn, well, I'm just watching like frivolous TV. There's nothing.
You know, it's dope though. I think that like when you came here the first day, you were shaky in how you felt about what you knew about 120 lessons, how you memorized it. But today, and that was a couple of weeks ago, you know what I'm saying? Today, you elevated and you sharpened up to the point where, you know, and I think that transition, that's worthy of noting.
That's good writing because I just got to the first degree in the actual thing.
See, so peace. That's what I'm saying. So you know, this is something that you celebrate in writing, and don't sleep on the historical significance of each milestone of each day, like what you're doing. Don't sleep on those things. Like a lot of times, I might have slept on it, then I look back like, oh wow, like I actually did that. Like you know, like I started doing this YouTube thing in 2014, and it was just like something like I'm gonna do it, you know. But it's had such a impact. You know what I'm saying? So
I was going around just like, you know, practicing it without having my lessons on me, but walking in the street, going from the first degree to make sure that I had it. Like,
You got that far, right? Everyone should have their own understanding of a degree. It could be developing, it could be pretty set in stone where they say it. That's all, I already gave you, right now, I'm just saying this, that's already at least 30, 40 pages to write. Because to say all that, what do I think of the Wisdom Bill degree? What do I think of this degree? And in that, what counts is also, I don't know shit about this degree. I have no thoughts about this degree. And then you start to say, how come this degree is stumping me? Because it says this, and I don't really have nothing for that. Putting things into words. Okay. You have children? Okay, right? When you write, think of someone that you're writing this to. It could be the general populace. It could just be like anyone, but have an audience in your head. You know? I have children though, so I have envisioned them reading this for like a long time later though. You know? Or at least when I'm not looking. I always tell them, you can read my stuff, but just don't let me see you reading them. Read them when I'm not around. The problem is I write really bad though, so I really write sloppy. So I get lucky. They only can read my published work while I'm around. I have to get somebody to decipher what's written in the journal. Because it's totally sloppy. You know?
Well, my wife's children, I consider them like my children.
So there you go. There you go. You know what I mean? But this should also be coupled with reading. You know? The truth is that you're out there proving that the black man has got with sciences. We haven't even gotten to quantum mechanics, biochemistry, all these sciences that prove who we are. How well read are we on these things? Right? Are we well read? Have we even read? What was the last book you read? Like, this is important. So you have to change your whole lifestyle. You know, you have to become a reader. Like I said, this is stuff that I do as a lifestyle. I've always done this, even before I got knowledge. But this shit is necessary. You know? If you're not thinking about something to read, something interesting, or something useful to study, right? That's what we go in there. You know?
I get it. I just ain't want to start writing a whole bunch of bullshit about some, you know what I'm saying, about bad experiences.
So what if you wrote a whole bunch of bullshit? Because if you wrote about bad experiences, though, then you're learning to be honest with yourself. right? If you decide how you're gonna train your body though, and you wrote down like what you did, right? I train in the martial arts. I write about what I do, like how it's going every day. I remember like this is how it's going. Or I have these injuries, you know, because you always have it. At my age, you always have some injury. You know what I mean? So I write about everything. So I always, you know, like I said, I have to do 20 a week. That's never enough. You know what I mean? And just have like a absolute gauge, you know? Definite amount. You know? But try it though.
Yeah,
Challenge yourself.
all right.
You know what I'm saying? You did this differently. You didn't walk into a church. You didn't go into anywhere else. Try all the things. You know? I mentioned Imhotep. Do you know what makes Imhotep great? It isn't because he made a pyramid. It's because when you study his life, though, he's one of the first Renaissance people in that sense.
Yeah.
He was doing all different type of things.
Yeah, he
And the
was.
truth is that all of us could be that. And throughout our history, there's people like that everywhere. Whether it's Imhotep or we go to India and the Bengalis and we look at Rabindranath Tagore. You know what I mean? So it's everywhere. You could do anything.
Humble.
Mhm.
Way off the tip.
You, to me, unless you do these things, you don't even know what your talents are.
Yeah.
You don't even know because you haven't tried.
Now you have to probably.
How do you know that you're a great writer?
Mm.
You don't even know.
You
If you ever read Down These Mean Streets, does it sound like B.D.
Yeah.
Cummings is a scholar or
Yeah.
a trained writer? No, he just wrote about something that he felt he wanted to get off his chest. He didn't know that it was going to be, you know,
so.
it was going to be that monumental. You know what I'm saying? He thought it might be a good book about a Puerto Rican that they don't write about.
About basic life.
It became a classic, right?
It did, yeah. That's
So
true, bro.
you never know. You know what I'm saying?
You know,
Until you
And the
try.
thing is, yo, the other man is writing biographies of his bullshit life every 2 seconds. Go look them up. Go look up biographies, what people write, what they lived and what lives they write about. It's really bullshit. There's some boring ass lives and shit. And it just has one unique pitch and perspective. And don't undercut your life. You know what I'm saying? One man walking in your shoes though, he'd be like, yo, this is mad dangerous. I'm scared, man. Somebody will say something. Like, this is exciting, oh, this is hard, whatever it is, you know? Right? But mostly, it's about how you see things and how to be able to notice understanding and catch your understanding of things as they happen. Because what's really going to happen is something happens, you see the degree, get understanding, all that happens. But when you write it out sometimes, it slows that process down. But try it, because we all should be writers, alright? We all should
Peace.
peace out.
All right, so you wrapping it up, yes?
Yes, I am.
So we can't do the after class. You put it all here.
Nah,
You know, when you wrote that, it just reminded me of like dojo, like
Oh, yeah, no, I give it all, yeah.
So you give it all. Say, I spend it all here. I don't got nothing else for you afterwards. Yo, peace, son. Yo, good progress though, man. Keep up the good work though, man. Keep building though. You know what I mean?
Self-magnetic law. Something about a law. Peace.
All right, peoples, ladies and gentlemen and ladies out there. Peace and multiple blessings. This was a good one, and until the next time. Peace. Stay tuned. I got some more videos on the channel, so I appreciate everybody watching. You know what I'm doing. Peace.
Everybody got their way of elevating. Everybody way, you know what I'm saying?